Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to your YouTube channel, CA Sansaar. I wonder who would not want to claim input tax credit or ITC. ITC reduces the cost of producing, supplying goods and services, and thereby reduces the cascading effects. ITC also makes the business competitive globally by ensuring that only goods and services are exported and not taxes as part of the cost. Thus, there is normally an urge to claim ITC whenever the same is permissible under law. However, it is not that simple. Law provides for certain conditions and restrictions concerning the availment of ITC. Even after 3 years of introduction of GST, there are so many issues that the taxpayer and professionals face on a day-to-day basis while dealing with ITC. At CA Sansaar, it is always our endeavor to help our co-professionals in resolving their issues. So today, we have with us CA Yash Dhadda ji, and he shall be sharing his expertise on issues under ITC under GST. Let me share some details about our speaker. He is a qualified chartered accountant, a commerce graduate, and a certificate holder of indirect tax course conducted by ICA. He is associated with Messrs. Dhada and Company as partner in direct taxation, having an experience of over 10 years in the field of indirect taxes with focus on GST, service tax, and excise matters. He is currently engaged in handling litigation along with advising clients, structuring transactions, and conducting due diligence. He was a special invitee to the Indirect Tax Committee of ICAI for the term 1819 and 1920. He is also on panel of CII as GST, service tax, and excise advisor for industry members. He has represented ICAI in Regional Advisory Committee, Rajasthan, under aegis of Chief Commissioner of Excise and Custom, Jaipur. Not just that, he has also written handbooks on principle of classification for goods and services under GST and also on casual taxable person for IDTC of ICAI. He has also actively contributed as core member of the team which has drafted technical guide on GST audits issued by ICAI. He has delivered lectures in northwestern and eastern parts of India and is also a regular attendee of various study courses on GST conducted by various professional bodies. He is an impaneled trainer on GST for NACIN, ICI, Regional Training Institute for Revenue and CAG officers, and Rajasthan SGST officers. He is also passionately engaged in grooming young professionals, CA, CS, MBAs on topic of soft skills and professional life management. I also welcome CA Vivek Khurana sir, the founder of CA Sansaar, and I request him to please formally welcome Yashji.
Thank you very much, Neha and CA Yash Dhadda ji, Speaker of the Day, and CA Neha Gupta ji, all other respected member of the profession. First of all, a warm welcome to all of you, and today's very important topic. And my sincere thanks to Yash ji for giving his valuable time and accepting our invitation. And this week, we got many appreciation for our webinars we have conducted, and today's also is a very important topic, issue in ITC. In fact, whenever we conducted some webinar on GST, I always says that GST is going more and more complicated day by day. Government is trying to do simplification, but don't know why it's going complicated. And also many members and are facing problem in the ITC. Means day by day new circular, new things. This thing you can take as the input tax credit. This is the limit. This is the date. So it's really difficult. And today we have with us very element speaker, and he will guide us regarding the issues in ITC. So without taking so much time, my request to Yash ji to please guide our member and us how we can uh, do some simplification in the GST and in ITC, the problem which we people are facing. So over to you, EST.
Thank you so much, Vivek ji. Thank you, Neha ji. A very good evening to all of you. I'll start with sharing my screen for once. Yeah. The screen is visible, sir.
Yes, sir. You just open it.
Yeah. So thank you so much, CA Sansaar family, for inviting me on this very interesting topic of ITC. And I was before just we started, I was talking to Vivek ji and Neha ji, and they were in fact explaining ki, how was the last week, what all programs you have done. And in fact, not during this lockdown or this pandemic situation, I think CA Sansaar has taken a lead since last 1 year only, and they have been conducting webinars so that members across the country, not in fact only members, but young professionals and all those who are pursuing their career in terms of taxation and other related fields, they are able to in fact get benefited from their initiative. So I congratulate them for the wonderful effort which they have taken. I'm sure with the number of attendees who are increasing day by day, and that clearly explains that you are doing good stuff, sir. So before we go to the topic, जैसा विवेक जी ने starting में बोला that GST is becoming complicated day by day, and in fact that's my first screen also. So you might be seeing this loading which is happening on your screens, and you might be wondering that my internet connection is slow, but that's not the case. Unfortunately, the way this GST is there in India, and the way it has been implemented and the way it has progressed in last 3 years, we can still say that it is in the loading phase. So just like we have come from 2G to 3G to 4G and 5G, so we all of us are waiting that we go to next level in terms of technology where everything is smooth, everything is quick. Maybe that GST is in that transition phase. Maybe it is right now at that 2G technology. It has to go to that 3G or 4G technology at some point of time. And because all of us are part and parcel of this, so we have to bear these little hiccups which are there. But having said that, interestingly, not only GST, but the way things have happened, especially in last 2 months, और जैसा generally लोग कहते हैं that now in fact all our lives beyond GST also, now we can say it is pre-COVID period and the post-COVID period, and right now we are during that COVID period. So life is not going to be same. But at least as a tax professional, all of us know that life never remains same. And the best example which we get is every year when we see a lot of changes happening. And in fact, in GST, every year is a wrong word. In fact, every day when we see a lot of changes happening, we realize that if we are not dynamic, if we are not adaptive, probably we won't be able to survive. या फिर एटलीस्ट ये लॉ का प्रैक्टिस तो ऐसा है कि हम नहीं कर सकते if you are not adaptive to the changes. But interestingly, the way changes have happened, and I have felt in last 2 months specifically, कि 3 चीजें हैं जिनका शायद आपस में इतना इंटरकनेक्शन ना हो, बट वो 3 चीजों को अगर हम साथ में लेके देखते हैं तो we realize that all of us as human beings, we were made to actually understand that we have to be ready for changes, but those changes were always told to us are going to be very slow changes so that we get time to prepare. But now look at the way technology has developed in last 10 years or so, or maybe I would say not in fact 10 years, in last 5 to 6 years or so. You see how GST has evolved in last 3 years or so, and you see how life has changed in this pandemic in last 2 months or so. And then probably we get an answer that going forward, things are never going to be settled. Going forward, we cannot expect structural changes which would take time, but we have to be ready for those changes which are overnight changes. And if we are ready for those overnight changes, probably then only at least we can call ourselves as experts, because generally what do experts do? So if you are practicing in a specific stream of law, you would always say that I understand the issue, you bring the issue to me, and then I will look at the law and then I'll tell you the answer. But now today the time is we have to also foresee what may happen in the law in the coming times, and whatever can happen in the coming times, can I advise my client or can I structure the transactions accordingly? And in fact, on this theme only, I have tried to handpick certain issues in ITC. So मैं जो भी बात करने वाला हूँ, They would not be structured just like I have started. I have handpicked some 10-15 issues around ITC, which some of those issues are recurring issues. Some of those issues are new issues. New issues in a sense to say that probably we are aware about it, but we don't know at what scale they are going to culminate. And then how can we prepare ourselves for that? And in case we are doing something which probably we need to look at, then I would like to just throw a perspective towards that. And at the end of it, we would try to take some questions for 10-15 minutes. So before I go to the issue, पहला कॉन्सेप्ट जो समझने के लिए मेरे हिसाब से जरूरी है, दैट बेसिकली व्हाट इज दैट इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स एंड क्रेडिट व्हिच हैज अ फाइनेंशियल इंपैक्ट ऑन एवरीबॉडीज बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स. So practically, if you look at it, there are 3 baskets, and interestingly, these 3 baskets they are not in the law. आप कानून में ढूंढने जाएंगे तो आपको आइडल क्रेडिट, फ्लोट क्रेडिट और वर्स क्रेडिट नाम से कोई चीज नहीं मिलेगी. बट हम सब जानते हैं दैट ऑल ऑफ अस वांट अ क्रेडिट जिसका बेनिफिट आई कैन टेक इंस्टेंटली. If it is possible to convert that into cash instantly, that is the best practice. If it is not possible to convert that into cash instantly, can I actually safeguard my outward cash by using that? That becomes my idle credit. और हम जितनी भी बात करते हैं, हम जितनी भी अंडरस्टैंडिंग करते हैं, हम जितनी भी प्लानिंग करते हैं, वो ये होता है कि हम फ्लोट क्रेडिट और वर्स्ट क्रेडिट से उठा के क्या हम हमारी क्रेडिट को आइडल क्रेडिट बना सकते हैं. Where we say क्या conditions है, मैंने conditions satisfy कर ली, मेरे पास invoice है, I want to use it and I have an outward tax and I want to pay it immediately. But life is not simple, and similarly the taxes. So in fact, a lot of our credit, it lies in the second basket, which is called as a float credit. In a sense, I know मेरे पास एक credit का claim है, मैं उसको इस्तेमाल कर सकता हूँ, पर वो इस्तेमाल मैं अभी नहीं कर सकता. और वो इस्तेमाल अभी नहीं करने के पीछे there are certain reasons. Some reasons are coming from the law. Some reasons are coming in the way I am doing my business, and some reasons are coming in a way how my supplier is doing the business. जहां पे हम कहते हैं कि जब तक इन्वेंट्री मेरे पास में है तब तक probably उस क्रेडिट को मैं इस्तेमाल नहीं कर पाऊंगा. There are time mismatches because of which I am not able to use it. Or in fact, I have paid tax, but that tax belongs to some another state, and that's why I may not be able to use it right now until unless that correction happens. And last is that where probably it tilts towards that side, where department has some understanding, and I totally do not agree with that understanding at some point, but I know that agar department ke haath mein gend hai or they have a ball in their hand, they will try to take it at their side, and I have to understand how can I systematically bring it back to my side. That is all those credits which I know jiska benefit mujhe nahi mil sakta hai, but still they are credits, and can I change them to either a float credit and if possible from float to the idle credit. The whole point of saying this is हमारे जितने भी आईटीसी के प्रोविजंस हैं जो सेक्शन 16 से शुरू होते हैं, वो सारे सेक्शन 16 से जो भी प्रोविजंस हैं, हम हमारे नजरिए से उसको एक तरफ में देखते हैं at one side. The other side, that is the revenue side, they're looking at the other extreme side, and practically both of us, the assessee and the department, at some point of time they converge towards this float credit. जहां पे हम कहते हैं ले लो क्रेडिट, अभी नहीं मिलेगा, इतना ही मिलेगा, थोड़े समय बाद मिलेगा या इतने प्रपोर्शन के अंदर मिलेगा. सो लेट्स ट्राई टू लुक एट फ्रॉम वेरियस पर्सपेक्टिव्स कि हम हमारे पास जो क्रेडिट के प्रोविजंस हैं उसमें जो स्पेसिफिक इश्यूज हैं हम उनको कौन से बास्केट में डाल सकते हैं और कैसे हम उनको फ्रॉम आवर पर्सपेक्टिव एटलीस्ट वी कैन गो टुवर्ड्स द आइडल साइड ऑफ द क्रेडिट. So the first point for discussion, which is very important, is the concept of input tax and input tax credit. I'm sure हम सब लोगों को इस चीज की अंडरस्टैंडिंग है कि अब input tax का हम जो क्रेडिट क्लेम करते हैं that becomes my ITC, and as all of us know that ITC is basically the soul of whole this GST law. But interestingly, we have input tax and that is defined in the law. और जब हम input tax का definition पढ़ते हैं, so input tax clearly says that in relation to a registered person, it means CT, ST, IT, union territory, and then other types, other manner in which we pay this CT, ST, IT, that is through reverse charge or imports or otherwise. Now the question which comes is, मान लीजिए मुझे किसी transaction के ऊपर credit लेना था और गलती से मैंने credit वो CGST, SGST के तौर पे ले लिया और वो credit actually invoice पे IGST है और supplier ने भी IGST पे करा है. Now, because I'm aware that there are a lot of chartered accountant and cost accountants here. So when we file GSTR 9 and GSTR 9C specifically, when we certify it, तो हम जब किताबों से compare करेंगे ऐसी credits को, so probably in the forms we would find a situation where I have a claim in my books which is correct as IGST, but in my returns the claim is incorrect as CGST SGST. और फॉर्म का स्ट्रक्चर इस तरीके से है कि वो हमको एक तरीके से सजेस्ट करता है कि जो गलत क्रेडिट है वो तो आप वापस कर दो, दैट इज CGST SGST जो रिटर्न में दिखाया है, और जो सही क्रेडिट है IGST अगर आप ले सकते हो गिवन द फैक्ट कि जो भी समय की पाबंदियां है, वट एवर रिस्ट्रिक्शंस ऑफ टाइम आर देयर, if within that you are able to satisfy it, then take the credit. The question which comes first of all is in all these cases is, do we really require to read input tax credit in 3 different baskets, that is CGST SGST IGST, or input tax credit as a whole is basically one basket which is given to us? Okay, in a sense, can I really take this understanding that even if I have taken the credit and maybe it is under a wrong head, if I've taken the credit and if it is under the wrong head, can I really take a view by saying that I have complied with the provisions, though there is an error, and I'm just rectifying that error? In a sense to say that मैं CGST SGST reverse कर दूंगा, IGST में ले लूंगा, but don't ask me to pay any interest. Don't tell me that I cannot take IGST because it is time barred and all those things, because ultimately what I have claimed is input tax credit. Now, answer to that practically basic it comes from is when we read actually input tax as a whole, and if in case we try to divide that in various things. The point is, जब हम सेक्शन 16 पढ़ते हैं, जो हमारा एलिजिबिलिटी का सेक्शन है, जो हमें एंटाइटलमेंट की बात करता है, वो एंटाइटलमेंट के अंदर इनपुट टैक्स को कभी भी दे आर नॉट बाइफिकेटिंग इनटू 3 सेपरेट बास्केट्स ऑफ CGST SGST IGST. They talk about only input tax credit. एंड इनपुट टैक्स का जो क्रेडिट का डेफिनेशन है, दैट इज लिंक्ड टू इनपुट टैक्स, और इनपुट टैक्स के अंदर तीनों आपस में सम्मिलित है. सो जस्ट बिकॉज देयर इज अ रॉन्ग हेड in the first point which I understand is ultimately the tax has been paid to the government. No doubt there has been a wrong tax claim which has happened. No doubt it may lead to a situation where a specific state government should have got a tax but they haven't got it, and a state government whose tax should not have been utilized but unfortunately it has been utilized. But that's not something which I am really concerned about. That's not something which is my responsibility as to check what are the internal arrangements or internal settlement mechanism from the government. I've committed a mistake. I want to rectify the mistake by internal adjustment, but don't tell me that I cannot claim the credit. So first thing to understand is that input tax credit has been written as a whole. Section 16 only talks about input tax credit. It doesn't talk about in CGST Act. और हम सेक्शन 16 अगर CGST का पढ़ते हैं तो वो ये नहीं बोलता इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट ऑफ CGST. अगर हम सेक्शन 16 किसी स्टेट एक्ट का पढ़ेंगे तो वो ये नहीं बोलेगा इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट ऑफ फलाना स्टेट टैक्स. So in that understanding, as to say, can I really bifurcate it? My understanding is still towards the point of saying no. In the law, the scheme is not like that. Procedurally हो सकता है फॉर्म उस हिसाब से बना रखे हो, but then procedures cannot actually become the master of what is given in the law. You take the second point of view from this, and that's ये जो second issue है, that is an issue which is a recurring issue, and that is something which has been faced by all of us in last 3 years. Where I have claimed credit of IGST. I am sitting in Rajasthan, and while claiming that credit in Rajasthan, there is a supplier which is there in UP. He has raised invoice, he has charged IGST, I have claimed IGST. तो input tax credit का जो definition है और input tax का जो definition है, वहां तक तो I am satisfying it, satisfying all conditions. The all boxes are checked. The only problem is that when I go to when the supplier has punched the invoice in the return, उसने क्या करा, IGST के अंदर जब उसको place of supply लिखना था तो उसने राजस्थान की जगह उत्तर प्रदेश लिख दिया, और let's say some another state he has written. And when I go to my portal, when I really go to my portal and I see मेरे 2A के अंदर वो credit तो दिख रहा है, but वो टैक्स इंटरनल सेटलमेंट मैकेनिज्म अगर हम समझते हैं तो दैट इज क्लियरली, क्योंकि वो आईजीएसटी में प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई राजस्थान नहीं है, so that tax would not flow to Rajasthan but it would go to unfortunately that state which is written in the GST returns. तो क्या कल को जाके can I get a notice from the department by saying that you have claimed credit of input tax or input tax credit, but वो IGST के अंदर place of supply राजस्थान नहीं है, and it does not actually matches with the GSTN in which the GST number in the state in which you are registered, hence we will not give you that credit of IGST. अगर आप अगेन जीएसटी का पोर्टल देखें, स्पेसिफिकली हम सब लोग जिन्होंने जीएसटीआर 9 भरा है, जिसमें एक टेबल 8 है जो 2A से मैचिंग कराता है, तो अगर हम 2A वाली मैचिंग को देखें तो वहां पर क्लियरली इस चीज की अंडरस्टैंडिंग दे रखी है कि अगर प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई जो रिटर्न जीएसटी 9 भर रहा है उसके स्टेट का नहीं है तो आईजीएसटी भी 8A के अंदर नहीं दिखाता है, तो हमारे मंथली 2A के अंदर दिखता है। तो जीएसटीएन ने तो ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग बना रखी है कि प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई आप ही का स्टेट होना चाहिए, जिस स्टेट में आप हैं जो क्रेडिट क्लेम कर रहे हैं। बट अगेन दिस डजंट कम फ्रॉम लॉ। There is no provision in the law which says that place of supply has to match with the state in which you are there. चाहे हम CGST Act पढ़ ले, SGST पढ़ ले, IGST पढ़ ले. So clear understanding on that part also is even if supplier has committed a mistake, he has charged the correct tax but with wrong place of supply, my credit cannot be taken away. You take third example, and that is which all of us know कि ये वाली चीज तो नहीं हो सकती. That is, I am sitting in Rajasthan. A hotel has raised invoice with CGST, SGST of Maharashtra. Can I take credit in Rajasthan? The answer would be clear no. In fact, there are advanced ruling also which says आप ना CGST का credit ले सकते हैं ना SGST का ले सकते हैं because that was उसमें place of supply was Maharashtra. Now the logic which flows for IGST कि राजस्थान में if I am sitting and the IGST and the place of supply was not Rajasthan but Uttar Pradesh, but उसका credit के लिए if I am saying that I can take it, the same logic it actually flows for at least CGST portion of that credit जो एक होटल ने महाराष्ट्र में बैठ के बनाया है मेरे लिए, if let's say I have taken services of hotel accommodation in Maharashtra. Again, for the simple reason, CGST Act is one act across nations. It never bifurcates कि CGST को भी हमको compartmentalize करने की जरूरत है. In fact, Section 1 of the Act says it is applicable to whole of India. So, in fact, CGST Act के अंदर तो state boundaries भी नहीं है. So, there is no clear reason as to say why that credit would not be available. But because again, as a precaution, we always treat it as a worst credit. तो जो मैं 3 baskets की बात कर रहा था, we treat it as a worst credit. In my understanding, it is not a worst credit. In fact, it's an idle credit, and that credit is available. No doubt, it might create a litigation, but we have a clear understanding from the law as to say that credit cannot be taken away. Somebody might say, what will happen to the SGST? So the answer would be that SGST के अंदर SGST में तो ring fencing करनी ही पड़ेगी, because आप जो SGST का credit लेते हैं, that comes from the Maharashtra state only. तो मैं राजस्थान में बैठ के वो SGST जो महाराष्ट्र का उसका credit I cannot take. But again, when I'm sitting here as a chartered accountant looking at the assessee side, and when I'm reading the law, one logical point which comes in mind is when we read CGST law, तो वहां पर input tax का definition दे रखा है, which you may be able to see on your screen. It includes SGST. Okay, it includes state tax. State tax का definition लिखा हुआ है that any specific state tax is applicable on the specific state. Now point is, अगर मैं राजस्थान SGST Act पढ़ रहा हूं तो मैं obviously उस राजस्थान SGST Act के अंदर किसी और स्टेट का क्रेडिट नहीं ले सकता. Please understand what I am trying to say. If I am reading input tax credit provisions from the Rajasthan SGST Act perspective in mind, तो वहां पर तो मैं महाराष्ट्र SGST का क्रेडिट नहीं ले सकता because that law very clearly says SGST in Rajasthan SGST Act means SGST of Rajasthan. बट जब मैं CGST Act पढ़ता हूँ राजस्थान में ही बैठ के राजस्थान के एसएससी के लिए, and when I read it, it only says state tax. और जब मैं state tax की definition CGST Act में जाके पढ़ता हूँ, it says whatever state tax as applicable in the respective state. So can I really take an argument and say that I have claimed the credit of state tax of Maharashtra under CGST Act but not under the RGST Act? Is there a restriction? Again, when you read law, you realize there is no restriction as such. Now, this is obviously challengeable, though this is not logical what I am saying. But again, when you read law, you have to keep logic at the back burner, but you have to actually go by what is written in the law. And when you actually read the law, you realize that there is no restriction as such on that part. So, in all these 3 perspectives, we realize कि हमने पिछले 3 सालों में इन चीज पे बहुत डिस्कस किया, इसका क्रेडिट मिलेगा, उसका नहीं मिलेगा, ये स्टेट का मिलेगा, वो स्टेट का नहीं मिलेगा. But when we try to read simple law, rather than going on the portal, rather than saying what are the procedures, rather than saying portal ये करने दे रहा है या नहीं करने दे रहा है, when you read the law, you realize law doesn't restrict all this. Now coming to second point in this, that is, we know that eligibility clearly says that it has to be input tax credit used or intended to be used in course and furtherance of the business. Now, all those people who come from the VAT background, and in fact, to some extent from excise background or service tax background, they know जो business के साथ connection है, it enlarges it. It enlarges the scope in which we can take the credit. अब यहाँ पे एक चीज है जो इंटरेस्टिंग है, जो now department has slowly picked up, and what they are basically trying to reach to a point. I don't know how far they would be able to actually take it, but they are understanding the issue from the perspective by saying कि जब हम ये हम जब section 16 subsection 1 पढ़ते हैं, so the words which you see in green, after that you see a word which is in blue, and it says in course and furtherance of his business. So what is the meaning of his here? The meaning of his is whether it is applicable on a registered person, or whether it is applicable on the company as a whole, or as a person as a whole. Because in GST, all of us understand that registered person is separate from the person, and a person might have separate registrations across the state. So jab if let's say again taking the example, I am in Rajasthan and I have another establishment in Maharashtra. So when I am talking about the credit which I am taking in the state of Rajasthan, should I have to actually look at the credit which I am taking is in course and furtherance of the business of Rajasthan, or whether it is in course and furtherance of the business as a whole of the company? Okay. Now again, when you literally read it, it gives an indication that registered person is because state specific, hence this his has to be read as a state. But again, when you go to the practicality, तो law में जो लिखा है जब हम उसको business के साथ implement करते हैं और and we go to the field and we realize we generally see the situation that we do not have businesses which are segregated in specific states. So there are a lot of activities which I might be doing in Rajasthan which are related to the business of Maharashtra, and vice versa also. और हम जब क्रॉस चार्ज की बात करते हैं, दो इट इज नॉट अ टॉपिक टुडे, बट हम जब क्रॉस चार्ज की बात करते हैं तो हम इसी के लिए बोलते हैं कि ये क्रॉस चार्ज करना पड़ेगा. इट्स अ डीम्ड सप्लाई अंडर शेड्यूल 1 एंट्री नंबर 2. So when we really say all those things, can I really not take a view by saying that his business has to be looked at the person as a whole? क्योंकि अगर यहाँ पर ऐसा नहीं है, if it is not so, that business is not as a person as a whole but it is state specific, then probably tomorrow isi argument ko use karke I can say that there was no business for me to actually provide a support service to another branch, because ye karne ke liye I have not established a factory in Rajasthan, and in that case there is no requirement to actually do a cross charge, because in course and furtherance of the business सिर्फ ITC में नहीं लिखा है, वो सेक्शन 7 के अंदर भी लिखा है जो सप्लाई के स्कोप को डिफाइन करता है. So clearly that is one point to understand, that this business as a whole, it has to be looked as a person as a whole, but not from that specific registered person point of view. But no doubt the scope of credit initially it is enlarged. It is not only related to the outward supplies, but it is linked to the business as a whole. And yahan se then the restriction starts. So once you have a big canvas where they say almost all kinds of credit are allowed, and then they try to reduce something. And let's try to go to some of the reductions specifically and some recent issues which have cropped up. And let's talk about a very simple and a basic issue first of all, that is receipt of goods and services. So as we know, section 16 subsection 2 के अंदर 4 conditions हैं, वो कहते हैं चारों conditions को fulfill करना जरूरी है. If you don't do that, then basically जो आपको entitlement 16(1) में दिया था, उस entitlement आपको reduce हो जाता है और it is restricted. All of us know very clearly what are these 4 conditions: receiving goods services, receiving invoices, filing my return, and the supplier has to pay tax. Okay. Now the second condition, that is receiving goods and services. It is very easy to write it that I have received goods and services. The question which comes is, who is required to prove it? Department is required to prove it, or am I required to prove it that I have received goods and services? In a sense, you take this example. Let's say I am actually selling a plot of land. मैं एक plot of land बेच रहा हूँ और मैं उसके ऊपर टैक्स पे नहीं कर रहा हूँ, तो एक किसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है सबसे पहले ये बताने की कि इस ट्रांजेक्शन के ऊपर टैक्स लगता है. So generally the understanding is very clear that if department is putting an allegation by saying that you have not paid tax on sale of plot of land for whatever reason, लगता है नहीं लगता है वो अलग कहानी है, but अगर वो allegation कह रहे हैं तो इस allegation के साथ में they have to come out with a justified reason as to why they are saying it. But in case of input tax credit, the situation is a little different, because in case of input tax credit there is a specific section 155 which says that onus is on basically the person who is claiming the credit, that he has satisfied the conditions and the credit which has claimed is an eligible credit. And that's why the first onus is the one person who is actually taking the credit. So tomorrow I cannot say to the department ki aap ulta prove karke dikhaiye that I have not received, but I will not prove that I have received the goods. So I have to always prove that I have received the goods. Now, how do I prove that? So now, again, the business comes into picture here. It is not very simple as to say that I have received the goods. So it's just that because I have the invoice or I have e-way bill, that's why the goods have been received. Because again, business is not only GST, but GST is one of the components of the business. And when we say that GST is one of the components of the business, we realize that business has a whole process and a whole chain in itself. Jahan pe there would be a purchase requisition made to a specific department or department of the company. वो बोलेंगे हमें ये चीज का requirement है. उसके बाद purchase order place होगा या contract execute होगा. फिर सामने वाला supplier उसको accept करेगा. Then he will give his invoice. He'll prepare an e-way bill. Then probably goods would be received, and when goods will be received, there will be some process. अब हो सकता है कुछ जगह पर manual process हो, gate register का, कुछ जगह automatic process और कुछ जगह technologically enabled process हो जो SAP या Tally के अंदर हो, जहाँ पे there is a soft MRN or GRN, goods receipt note or material receipt note is being prepared. Then after that, there is a process of PO matching, invoice matching, and GRN matching. I am saying all this from the perspective of a person who is very systematic. And because that person is systematic, it has one challenge, which I'll come to that, what challenge that person has. So then we have this process of matching. And you realize up till what you see in the green, till that time, there is no entry in the books of account that they have made the purchase. So these 4 steps happen, goods are received in the factory. Once that matching happens, then accounts would actually come into picture. Accounts की यहाँ पर purchase record होगी. और वो जो परचेज रिकॉर्ड हो रही है प्रैक्टिकली दैट बिकम्स अ पॉइंट वेयर वी से यस वी हैव रिसीव्ड द इनवॉइस बिकॉज दैट इज एक्नॉलेज इन द अकाउंट्स. उसके पहले वाला द ग्रीन स्टेप इज दैट पॉइंट वेयर वी सेइंग यस आई हैव रिसीव्ड द गुड्स and then there is this matching with GST or 2 of the accounts, filing of returns, and then payment to the vendor. So that's the whole process. That's how one transaction is completed. Now when you say this, you realize कि हमको अगर goods का receipt proof करना है. So basically, in case of goods and services, in case of goods, there can be a 3-way combination. In case of services, there can be a 2-way combination. So in case of goods, 3-way combination is basically supplier's invoice matching with the e-way bill which he has prepared, and then matching with my GRN. Maybe in case of services, there will be obviously no e-way bill in that case. And once I have this, so now take an example. Tomorrow I have an exceptional purchase. मेरी एक ऐसी purchase है which is exceptional in nature. Or to be precise, let's take an example where let's say I'm importing some goods and I'm sitting in Rajasthan. मैंने कुछ goods import करे जो गुजरात में मुंद्रा पोर्ट के ऊपर है और मैं उन goods को वहीं से directly I want to give it to my customer from Gujarat only rather than bringing to Rajasthan and from Rajasthan giving it to my customer who is there in Maharashtra. तो मैं गुजरात से deflect करके I want to give it to some another person. Am I required to take registration in Gujarat or not? Probably वो आज का topic नहीं है. But more or less, when people would go in the law, they will realize that it is not really necessary to actually prove that I have received that I am required to take registration in Gujarat. The point is not registration. The point is from my records, it should come out very clearly that actually I have received those goods once I have filed the bill of entry. Because just because bill of entry file हो गई और माल कस्टम से निकल गया, तो वो माल किसके पास है? वो माल मेरे पास है या मेरे CHA के पास है? अगर वो माल मेरे CHA के पास है तो क्या CHA मेरा एजेंट है? और अगर CHA मेरा एजेंट है तो ये एस्टैब्लिश कैसे होगा जिससे उसने मेरे बिहाफ पे गुड्स का पोजीशन ले रखा और वहीं से वो डायरेक्टली महाराष्ट्र देने वाला है? Why? Because if let's say something happens between Gujarat and Maharashtra, who will take the responsibility? Whether CHA will take responsibility or I'll take the responsibility. Who has the responsibility of insurance and all those things? And probably this becomes very crucial क्योंकि ये फिर हमारी किताबों के साथ मैच होना चाहिए. Because though I have not physically received the goods, I am saying constructive delivery goods की तो हुई है मेरे को. And that constructive delivery should be part of my record keeping which is happening. And that is why when we say that I've received the goods, that receive the good does not only mean whenever I'm receiving the goods physically, but it also means constructive delivery. But again, that constructive delivery, it has to come from my records. I have to prove it. And that proving हो सकता है इस केस में GRN ना मिले मुझे. तो अगर GRN नहीं मिले तो मेरे पास और कोई डॉक्यूमेंट होना चाहिए जिससे I can say that yes, goods were in my possession, but not lying with third person CHA in his own capacity. Though there are judgments which clearly say कि अगर आपके ट्रांसपोर्टेशन डॉक्यूमेंट्स में, जीआरएन में या किसी और चीज के अंदर डिस्क्रिपेंसी है, तो उसके बेसिस पे आपका क्रेडिट रिवर्स नहीं हो सकता. इनफैक्ट देयर इज अ मध्य प्रदेश हाई कोर्ट जजमेंट इन केस ऑफ मित्तल इंजीनियरिंग व्हिच क्लियरली सेज कि अगर आपकी डॉक्यूमेंट्स में डिस्क्रिपेंसी है और वो डॉक्यूमेंट्स की डिस्क्रिपेंसी को अगर आप लेटर पॉइंट के ऊपर सब्सटैंशिएट कर सकते हैं कि और डॉक्यूमेंट्स के साथ में, देन योर क्रेडिट क्लेम इज एब्सोल्युटली वैलिड. So if my record keeping is not proper in respect of all this receipt and all those things, probably a question can be raised, but then I have to prove it from another perspective. Take this from one more point of view. That is, we generally say what will happen to the normal loss. That is, and that's very normal. That whenever I am receiving goods, I know कि अगर मुझे 100 क्वांटिटी चाहिए, so I have to place order of 102 quantities because दो क्वांटिटी ऐसी है जो नॉर्मल डिस्पैच के दौरान और ड्यूरिंग द कोर्स ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्टेशन दे विल बी लॉस्ट. I will always make payment of 102 quantity. Supplier will also make invoice of 102 quantity. But when I'll receive in my goods, or whenever I'll receive them in my premises, they will only remain 100. They will not be 102. So am I required to actually reverse the credit of those two quantities which I have not received? For example, in the example which you see on the screen, सामने वाले ने 100 भेजी, मेरे यहाँ पर 20 है जो ट्रांजिट में लॉस हो गया. 5 ऐसी है जो सप्लायर को भी पता था, मुझे भी पता था कि वो भेजेगा पर मुझे रिसीव नहीं होगी फॉर वट एवर रीजन, दैट्स अ ट्रांजिट लॉस. 12 ऐसी है जो ड्यू टू एक्सेप्शनल सिचुएशन दे हैव बीन लॉस्ट एंड सप्लायर हैज अग्रीड दैट यस दे शुड नॉट हैव बीन लॉस्ट. और 12 में से 4 के सप्लायर बोलता है आई एम रेडी टू रिप्लेस इट, बट 8 के लिए ही इज नॉट अग्रीइंग और वहां पे हमारा डिस्प्यूट है. नाउ ऑल दीज केसेस टिपिकली आउट ऑफ दिस 20, department obviously would always say that you have to reverse the ITC in respect of 20. But when you practically look at it, you realize that when you are placing order for 102 and you're receiving 100, no doubt physically you have received 100 only. But you always knew that basically the order is for 102. So in a sense, whatever loss has happened, that loss is yours. तो क्रेडिट तो हम लेंगे एक बार, क्रेडिट का आगे रिवर्सल करना है लेने के बाद या नहीं उसके लिए दूसरे प्रोविजन है. बट at the starting point, nobody can tell me that I was only eligible to take credit of 100, but I was not. I was only eligible to take credit of 80, but not this 5. So ये 5 का क्रेडिट तो मैं ले सकता हूँ. जो टॉलरेबल नहीं है, नो डाउट ये वो है जिसके ऊपर आई एम डिस्प्यूटिंग दैट आई शुड हैव रिसीव्ड. सप्लायर इज सेइंग yes you should have received but you have not received. So 12 is questionable, which is non-tolerable according to me also. That credit is not eligible to that extent of 12. However, the 4 items which are replaceable, so once they will be replaced, in a sense जब भी वो 4 आएंगे वो टाइम पे जाके I can take the credit. So अभी 4 देखेंगे, so ये actually उस बास्केट में फॉल करती है which is a float credit. That is, ये क्रेडिट मिलेगा तो सही पर तब मिलेगा जब actually I receive it. But बाकी जो 5 का क्रेडिट टॉलरेबल I would always get it. 12 definitely I would never get it. ज्यादा आ गया, there is never a problem because nobody is basically paying anything for it. Anyway, we are taking the credit of the whole amount which you have paid. That brings me in respect of record keeping, which is very important, which I understand is in record of कि हम जो record keeping की बात करते हैं GST में in respect of input tax, ये थोड़ा different है section 16 से, and I am sure most of us know it, but today when we actually do GST audit, or probably now when the department has also started doing the audit, this is something which all of us should clearly understand, that in GST, specifically in case of manufacturing, all those who are manufacturing, they are required to maintain one specific record. And what is that record? What do you see in red? Quantitative detail of raw material or services used in manufacture of goods. Now interestingly, अगर हम रिकॉर्ड देखें तो ये क्या बोल रहे हैं? ये बोल रहे हैं कि आपका फिनिश गुड्स बनाने में जो भी आपकी सर्विसेज और रॉ मटेरियल या कंज्यूमेबल्स लगे हैं, उनका कंजम्पशन पैटर्न का आपके पास में रिकॉर्ड होना चाहिए. No doubt, not only in GST but in income tax also they ask for it, in other record they ask for it. But can tomorrow I tell a GST officer कि जब क्रेडिट लेने के लिए कंडीशन सिर्फ बिजनेस से लिंक्ड है तो मैं आपको कंजम्पशन का रिकॉर्ड क्यों दूं? So the answer is no. He can definitely ask for that consumption record. What can happen when he asks for a consumption record and that record is not to that greater clarity जैसा होना चाहिए था? That causes a problem in respect of how have we actually recorded the wastage, how have we recorded the processing loss, how have we recorded the exceptional losses. Because whatever loss is happening, the processing loss, तो अगर वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग लॉस है जिसका मुझे इनपुट आउटपुट रेशियो पता है, then practically it is not a loss, it is not a wastage, but it has been consumed during the course of manufacturing. बट समथिंग विच इज एक्सेप्शनल, और वो एक्सेप्शनल है या नहीं है वो फाइनेंशियल रिकॉर्ड से नहीं पता चल सकता, वो इसी रिकॉर्ड से पता चलेगा। एंड ये रिकॉर्ड चूंकि मुझे मेंटेन करना जरूरी है, सेक्शन में लिखा हुआ है 35 में, मुझे बताना जरूरी है, सो इट हैज एन इम्पैक्ट ऑन माय इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट रिवर्सल्स आल्सो इफ इन केस आई एम नॉट मेंटेनिंग इट प्रॉपर्ली. So in fact, as professionals also, when we are actually certifying the books and we are saying the records were proper, I think this is one record in respect of goods which is very important for service supplier also and manufacturer also, because it is applicable on both service supplier also and manufacturer also, that the consumption pattern is maintained. Otherwise there can be an issue where somebody can ask, somebody can propose us and they say that whatever credit you have taken proportionately, that should have been reversed in that case. Okay, now I come to some specific reversals, and that this is a very interesting provision. Again, all those who take a conservative stand on reversal, they generally want to do the reversal. गवर्नमेंट का अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज ऑल्सो कि जो माल आप इस्तेमाल नहीं कर रहे हैं उसका आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा, एज सिंपल इज दैट. चाहे सेक्शन 16(1) में लिखा है यूज्ड और इंटेंडेड टू बी यूज्ड इन कोर्स एंड फर्दरेंस ऑफ बिजनेस, बट जो आप एक्चुअली इस्तेमाल नहीं कर रहे हैं उसका क्रेडिट आपको नहीं मिलना चाहिए. हाउ डू दे ब्रिंग दैट? So they bring that through Schedule 1. So Schedule 1 हमको पता है डीम सप्लाईज का शेड्यूल है. वो Schedule 1 ये कहता है परमानेंट ट्रांसफर और डिस्पोजल ऑफ बिजनेस असेट्स वेयर इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट हैज बीन अवेल्ड ऑन सच असेट्स. तो अगर आप ऐसे असेट्स जिनके ऊपर आपने इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट अवेल किया था, अगर आप उनको परमानेंटली डिस्पोज कर रहे हैं या ट्रांसफर कर रहे हैं, देन इट बिकम्स अ डीम सप्लाई एंड यू आर रिक्वायर्ड टू पे टैक्स एज इफ इट बिकम्स एन आउटवर्ड सप्लाई. Now you are reversing the credit or you're paying tax, deeming it as an outward supply. More or less financially it means same. उसका treatment अलग-अलग हो सकता है, but financially it means same. Now the question which comes is, मान लीजिए अगर कोई मेरी फिनिश गुड्स की इन्वेंट्री है जिसको मैं स्क्रैप कर रहा हूँ या मैं उसको डिस्पोज कर रहा हूँ, it is my slow moving item. Am I required to reverse my input tax credit? Now when you read it, maybe in a cursory manner, you realize yes, it looks like this, I'm required to reverse it, but the language is little different. It says permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where input tax credit has been availed on such assets. जिस वर्ड पे यहाँ पे थ्रस्ट देने की जरूरत है, that is on. बिजनेस असेट्स पे नहीं जाते हैं अभी कि बिजनेस असेट्स में फिनिश गुड्स आएंगे नहीं आएंगे, रॉ मटेरियल आएंगे नहीं आएंगे, ऑल दोस थिंग, बट द ऑन वर्ड एक्चुअली टॉक्स अबाउट द 1-to-1 कोरिलेशन. तो कोई एक स्पेसिफिक आइटम ए जिसका मैंने क्रेडिट लिया है और वही आइटम को अगर मैं परमानेंटली ट्रांसफर या डिस्पोज ऑफ कर रहा हूं विदाउट चार्जिंग एनीथिंग फ्रॉम एनीबडी, then the schedule 1 entry 1 says that I am required to actually reverse the credit in that case. And irrespective of whether this rule 30 says कि अगर आपके पास वैल्यूएशन का मैकेनिज्म नहीं है इसका तो 110 में जाए. So my understanding would be schedule 1 में manufactured finished goods कभी भी fall नहीं करेंगे. You will never have a case where you have a manufactured finished goods जिसको अगर आप राइट ऑफ कर रहे हैं, it will never fall in this schedule 1 entry 1 because हमने फिनिश गुड्स पे कभी क्रेडिट नहीं लिया. हमने जो क्रेडिट लिया था वो रॉ मटेरियल के ऊपर लिया था, and hence that is why there is no 1-to-1 correlation in that case, and hence and no reversal of credit is required. Now am I required to reverse the credit on capital goods? अगर capital goods पे क्रेडिट ले रखा और उसको हम राइट ऑफ करते हैं, then is there a challenge? We'll come to that in a while because उसके पहले इसी से लिंक एक सेक्शन है. So somebody would say कि okay, you have a logic in saying कि schedule 1 entry 1 में जाकर रिवर्सल नहीं होगा, but what about this section 17(5)(h) जो ये कहता है कि वो सारे गुड जो आपके those are lost, stolen, destroyed, written off or disposed of by way of gift or free sample, you have to reverse the credit. Now in that case again the answer would be that we should not only read H but we should read 17(5)(h. तो सेक्शन 17 सबसेक्शन 5 में क्या लिखा है उसके साथ अगर हम H को पढ़ते हैं, maybe we get a clear answer. And 5 says notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1 of section 16 and subsection 1 of section 18, input tax credit shall not be available in respect of goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off. Now again the word which is again important is in respect of. I'm sure you have heard this before also from somebody, but it is very important that there is a Supreme Court judgment in case of Swastik Tobacco Company in central excise regime only, जहां पे एक exemption की respect में था, जहां पे वो in respect of को interpret कर रहे थे और उन्होंने बोला Indian laws के context में in respect of को on ही पढ़ना चाहिए. So you should in fact replace in respect of as on. और जब आप सेक्शन 17 से सेक्शन 5 में इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ की जगह ऑन के साथ जब एच पढ़ते हैं तो वी गेट द सेम आंसर जो हमने शेड्यूल 1 के एंट्री 1 के लिए लिया. दैट इज वो सारे गुड्स जिस पे हमने क्रेडिट लिया है, अगर वो गुड्स चोरी हो जाते हैं और दे आर डिस्ट्रॉयड, स्टोलन, रिटर्न ऑफ, और या फिर हमने उनको सैंपल के तौर पे दिया है, then only you are required to reverse the credit. Otherwise, they, in fact, 17.5H does not cover the situation जहां पर हम मैन्युफैक्चर्ड गुड्स को अगर राइट ऑफ कर रहे हैं तो उसका रिवर्सल करने की जरूरत है. तो 17.5H में भी कवर नहीं होता आईटीसी रिवर्सल में. शेड्यूल 1 एंट्री 1 में भी कवर नहीं होता फिनिश गुड्स का अगर हम रिटर्न ऑफ कर रहे हैं. एंड इन बोथ दीज केसेस आई डोंट सी एनी चैलेंज वेयर वी हैव टू एक्चुअली रिवर्स द क्रेडिट. कमिंग टू द पॉइंट कि अगर हम कोई सैंपल बना के किसी को दे रहे हैं, वी आर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अ सैंपल एंड देन वी आर गिविंग इट टू एनीबॉडी, द आंसर वुड रिमेन सेम कि आप जब सैंपल के बारे में भी पढ़ते हैं और डिस्पोज्ड ऑफ बाय वे ऑफ गिफ्ट ऑफ फ्री सैंपल, ये बात कर रहा है वो गुड्स जिन पे आपने क्रेडिट लिया था, अगर आप वो सैंपल के तौर पे दे रहे हैं, देन यू आर रिक्वायर्ड टू रिवर्स द क्रेडिट. एंड हेंस 17.5H इज नॉट एप्लीकेबल ऑन मैन्युफैक्चर्ड सैंपल्स आल्सो. नाउ अगर आप इसका अदरवाइज देखिए कि गवर्नमेंट का क्या अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, तो गवर्नमेंट ने एक सर्कुलर के थ्रू अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग बिल्कुल उलट बताई है जो मैं बोल रहा हूं. इनफैक्ट दैट सर्कुलर वाज इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ मैन्युफैक्चर्ड मेडिसिन. वो मेडिसिन जो एक्सपायर हो गए और वो मेडिसिन वापस मैन्युफैक्चरर के पास में आ रहे हैं, जो पहले मैन्युफैक्चरर का फिनिश गुड्स था, बट दे कमिंग बैक फ्रॉम डीलर टू द मैन्युफैक्चरर बिकॉज दे आर एक्सपायर्ड एंड देन दे हैव टू बी डिस्ट्रॉयड. In that case, whether any credit reversal is required, in the circular number 72, they have clearly said yes, manufacturer is required to reverse the credit. Again, as I have been saying since starting, procedures or in fact clarifications also, they cannot override what is written in the law. The interpretation of law is supreme, and then all these things are only aid to what is written in the law, but they cannot contradict what is written in the law. So this circular, to that extent, in my humble understanding, is not in line with what is written in the law. Coming to the point is, sales promotion के केस में हम जो क्रेडिट लेते हैं उसको रिवर्स करने की जरूरत है क्या? And somebody can say it becomes a gift. Again, there are a lot of judgments which clearly say that all sales promotion items are not gifts. Specifically, वो सारे sales promotion items which are given to the dealers, which are given to the customers, which are given as a prize and all those things. Generally, in all those cases, if we go deeper, if we try to have a proper documentation, we will always be able to identify they are not gratuitous in nature. There is always some amount of quid pro quo. There is some amount of encouragement which is being done to the person who is actually receiving these sales promotion items. तो अगर ये manufactured है, any which way reversal not required. But अगर ये sales promotion item किसी और item के साथ में दिए गए हैं, किसी contest में दिए गए हैं, और maybe they are bundled with something else, इसका taxability कैसे हो सकता है? That is another issue. But I don't really see any reason why input tax credit in respect of these items is required to be reversed. Then, in fact, there is one judgment also in respect of central excise. Though I would not say this judgment would 100% be applicable, but again, depending upon the facts, what this judgment clearly says is कि जहां पर ऐसी स्कीम्स है जहां पर किसी गुड्स के साथ में कोई दूसरा गुड्स फ्री में दिया गया है, वर्ड फ्री हैज बीन यूज्ड, it is purely basically a discount which has been given to the customer or the person who is receiving it, rather than saying that the other good which was given as free और उसके ऊपर ITC reversal की जरूरत है. I think the same concept would be applicable under GST regime also, and we should be able to actually take the credit and explain it to the officer as to clearly why it is not the case of reversal under 17.5H. So till now, what I have been trying to explain is manufactured samples, I don't see a problem. Manufactured finished goods written off, I don't see a problem. Anything which is given as a sales promotion item, and if we have a proper documentation as to say whom they are being given and if they are targeted in nature, I don't see a problem. So in all these three cases, I really don't see a problem, though no doubt the other side would always have a problem. But if in case we are strong with our documentation and we clearly know कि हम किस चीज के ऊपर जवाब दे रहे हैं, probably would be able to actually succeed in those cases. Now, so because I have covered this, now I come to capital goods. अगर हमने capital goods मान लीजिए जिसपे क्रेडिट लिया और हम उनको write off कर रहे हैं, we are writing them off, or we are basically saying I don't need them anymore further. Am I required to do anything? वहां पे there is a specific provision, that is section 18 subsection 6, जो clearly बोलता है कि अगर आपने capital goods या plant and machinery किसी के ऊपर अगर आपने क्रेडिट लिया हुआ है and then you are giving it to somebody else in a specific period of time, then there is a specific mechanism कि आप या तो ITC रिवर्सल निकाल लीजिए जो रूल में लिखा हुआ है उसके हिसाब से, या फिर आप जिस वैल्यू पे दे रहे हैं वो ट्रांजैक्शन वैल्यू निकालिए और उसके ऊपर टैक्स देखिए, दोनों में से जो ज्यादा है वो आपको टैक्स देने की जरूरत है. So all of us know this is section 18 subsection 6. Now what is problem with this section? The problem with this section is the mechanism. जिस mechanism से ये ITC रिवर्सल की बात करते हैं वो mechanism में थोड़ी ambiguity है. So all of us know what this mechanism says is, हम generally ये law के अंदर capital asset की life या plant and machinery की life 5 साल मानी गई है, और ये माना गया है कि अगर आप 5 साल के पहले बेचते हैं या dispose of करते हैं, or you're giving it to somebody else, then in that case आपने जितना भी credit लिया है वो proportionately उस 5 साल की period में per quarter a specific percentage you have to reverse it. ये कहां से आता है? ये आता है रूल 40 से, और आपको रूल 40 के साथ में एक और रूल दिखेगा, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज रूल 44. सो व्हाट इज रूल 44 सेइंग इन दैट केस? तो रूल 44 ये कहता है दैट आपको जब रिवर्सल करना है तो रिवर्सल कैसे करना है? जितना भी आपने इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट लिया था मल्टीप्लाइड बाय जितनी भी रिमेनिंग यूजफुल लाइफ बची है 60 महीने या 5 साल में से, मतलब मान लीजिए अगर मैं 4.5 साल में बेच रहा हूं इसको, तो बेसिकली 6 महीने के 5 महीने के आसपास का पीरियड बाकी है. So 5 divided by 60, that's total number of months in 5 years into multiplied by credit. जो भी फिगर आएगा उतना basically I am entitled to take, उसके उतना basically I have to reverse, sorry, that I have to reverse, I am not entitled to take. But एक और है रूल 40, और वो रूल 40 भी बोलता है कि सेक्शन 18 सबसेक्शन 6 के हिसाब से जो आपको ITC रिवर्सल करने की जरूरत है वो आपको 5% पर क्वार्टर ऑफ पार्ट देयर ऑफ के हिसाब से करने की जरूरत है. So now we have a situation where रूल 40 और रूल 44 दोनों 18 सबसेक्शन 6 के ऊपर लगते हैं. दोनों रूल्स के अंदर 18 सबसेक्शन 6 का रेफरेंस है. दोनों का मैकेनिज्म कंप्यूटेशन का डिफरेंट है, और अगर आप रूल 40 के हिसाब से रिवर्सल करते हैं तो आपका रिवर्सल थोड़ा ज्यादा आएगा, अगर आप रूल 44 के हिसाब से रिवर्सल करते हैं आपका रिवर्सल थोड़ा कम आएगा. Which rule should we follow? Now again there is a clear confusion in this case. Which should be followed? Again, if you are on the conservative side and the amount of reversal is not much, probably 40 should be followed. बट प्रैक्टिकली रूल 44 है जो 18 सबसेक्शन 6 के तहत लिखा गया है, क्योंकि 44 का हेडिंग भी यही बोलता है मैनर ऑफ रिवर्सल ऑफ क्रेडिट इन स्पेशल सर्कमस्टेंसेस, और 18(6) भी रिवर्सल ऑफ क्रेडिट की बात करता है. बट जब आप कंप्यूटेशन के लिए जाएंगे यू वुड ऑलवेज सी दैट देयर इज अ डिफरेंस इन दिस केस, एंड देन यू हैव टू पिक एंड चूज. So this is one problem in the mechanism in respect of 18 subsection 6, which probably government has to take care of. Till now we talked about some reversal. Let's talk about where can we take credit, or where probably we have not been taking, but can we really look at taking the credit. So one is very straightforward, very simple, an amendment which has happened on 1st of February 2019, that is input tax credit on trucks or buses. So up till now उसके 1-2-2019 के पहले हमें ये चीज का अंडरस्टैंडिंग थी कि हम वो व्हीकल का क्रेडिट ले सकते हैं विच आर बेसिकली फॉर मूवमेंट ऑफ गुड्स, या फिर वो पैसेंजर व्हीकल का क्रेडिट ले सकते हैं जो स्पेसिफिक पर्पसेस के लिए यूज में आते हैं. देन द अमेंडमेंट वाज मेड, और उन्होंने बोला कि नाउ हम ये बताते हैं आप किसका क्रेडिट नहीं ले सकते. सो अगेन इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड, पहले ये लिखा था आप क्या ले सकते हैं, मतलब था 17(5) जो ए था दैट वाज इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ ब्लॉक क्रेडिट ओनली, बट इट वाज रिटन इन अ वे व्हिच बेसिकली सेड कि एक्सेप्शन में आप क्या कर सकते हैं. नाउ इट इज अदर वे अराउंड व्हिच सेज कि ये दो क्रेडिट है आप इनका नहीं ले सकते, रेस्ट व्हाटएवर इज लेफ्ट ओवर यू कैन टेक द क्रेडिट. ओके, so when I say that, what comes first is जो एक बड़ा important difference है, that is a change is now we can take credit in respect of buses, that is all those vehicles which have a sitting capacity of more than 13, and इसके अंदर the small buses to big buses are now covered. So in case of a passenger vehicle, that's a new change, and in fact not only its purchase but its repair, maintenance. If you have taken any bus on lease, you have taken a bus on rental, you have hired a bus, and interestingly friends, there is a difference in case of a hire, there is a difference in case of lease, and to some extent rental also. So maybe lease and rental we can put them in one category, but hire is clearly where you are saying that I don't want to take the bus as a whole, but I want to hire it for achieving a certain task. So let's say I am taking a bus on hire where I am saying मेरे employees को यहाँ से लेके factory तक और factory से लेके वापस तक I want the bus service, that's a bus on hire. Vis-a-vis where I say that I need a bus for this many number of hours on daily basis, and I'll decide what I want to do with it. That's basically called as rental or hire in that case. But if it is more than a 13-seater capacity vehicle, we should be able to take credit. There is no problem. Now generally in this case, one issue जो GST आने से लेके 31 जनवरी 2019 तक जो एक issue था, that credit in respect of JCBs and all those things, क्योंकि JCB एक ऐसा व्हीकल है which is obviously not a passenger vehicle. Interestingly, it's not a vehicle which is used for transportation of goods. It's a vehicle which is registered under the Motor Vehicles Act, बट ये ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के लिए काम में ना आके इट इज बेसिकली मोर ऑफ यूज एज एन एक्सकवेशन, इट्स एन एक्सकवेटिंग व्हीकल. Now, because it was treated as a conveyance and a vehicle and it was not used for transportation of goods, तो 1/2/2019 के पहले इसकी क्रेडिट के ऊपर क्वेश्चन मार्क था, क्रेडिट मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा, they were different views. Now, after 1/2/2019, it becomes very clear that because it is not a passenger vehicle which is having a capacity less than 13, so there is no problem in taking the credit. आप उसका भी credit ले सकते हैं, along with taking credit for obviously those vehicles which are used for transportation of goods. Now, in specific industries, like specifically in case of media, newspaper specifically, बहुत बार passenger vehicle को इस्तेमाल करा जाता है goods movement के लिए. Like for example, you would see jeeps are being hired by the media industry, where in those jeeps which are designed to carry the passenger, उसके अंदर goods को डाला जाता है, that is newspaper, और उसका movement किया जाता है. Now, can we say that becomes a vehicle which is used for carrying transportation of goods, उसका credit मिल जाएगा? The answer is no, because now the language is very clear that the vehicle should be designed to carry the passenger, irrespective it is carrying passenger or goods or anything of that sort. तो अगर व्हीकल पैसेंजर कैरी करने के लिए डिजाइन किया गया है तो आप उसमें चाहे गुड्स ले जाइए, पैसेंजर ले जाइए, डजंट मैटर. अगर वो 13 सीटिंग कैपेसिटी से कम का है, द क्रेडिट वुड नॉट बी अवेलेबल. So now in that case we can clearly identify that the scope of restriction has reduced, and in fact the scope of taking the credit in respect of vehicles has increased. Insurance, that is one area where there is some confusion that credit किसका मिलता है किसका नहीं मिलता है. So all of us generally they know that in case of a life insurance and in respect of health insurance, the credit is not allowed. You are not basically allowed to take credit unless it is allowed in the law. Now, there are two types of things which generally a company would do. One is key man insurance policy, and second is a workman compensation insurance policy. Key man insurance policy is generally insurance of the key management personnel, directors, MD, and all those things. Unke case mein, if in case any mishappening happens with them, because the insurer was the company would get the compensation. The question which comes is, can a company take credit of key man insurance? Now, first of all, generally it is not mandated in any law. So उस restriction से तो ये बाहर चला जाता है. Second, it is more of a life insurance, and because it becomes a life insurance, hence credit would not be available. However, workman compensation जो insurance policy, it is little different. It is on a footing where during the working hours and while working, if any injury or anything bodily injury or maybe sudden death or anything of that sort happens with the employee because of the occupational hazard or because of the circumstances in which he was working, then in that case that the policy is being taken. Now, in that case, clearly it is neither a health insurance nor a life insurance. It's basically an insurance which is to mitigate the risks which are there at the workplace, and clearly in that case credit would be available. So we can say that workman compensation insurance policy का तो credit मिलना चाहिए, but key man insurance policy ऐसा है जिसका credit इन law में नहीं मिलता unless it is mandated by law. Now, because of this COVID, there is one more product which has come in the market, which is called as a medical insurance. Though it was already there, but why I'm saying it's a new product? Because this product has been re-engineered after an advisory or order, in fact, which was issued by Ministry of Home Affairs under the National Disaster Management Act. So, because during the lockdown, National Disaster Management Act was applicable throughout the India. Now, in that period, if some entity had to actually open the office or the establishment, there was a specific standard operating procedure which was given by the Ministry of Home Affairs. वो स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर में बहुत सारी चीजें लिखी थी, एस्टैब्लिशमेंट को करना कंपलसरी था. उसके अंदर द फिफ्थ पॉइंट वाज रिगार्डिंग द मेडिकल इंश्योरेंस ऑफ द वर्कर्स टू बी मेड मैंडेटरी. उनको बोला गया कि ये आपको करवाना पड़ेगा. नाउ because it has been made mandatory again through an order though, but that order has been issued under a National Disaster Management Act, hence now it becomes a health medical insurance which is mandatory under a specific law which establishment has to comply with. तो जिन लोगों ने एक स्पेसिफिक पीरियड के बाद, जब से ये एडवाइजरी आई थी उसके बाद कराया है, नाउ व्हाट बेसिकली दे कैन डू इज, बिकॉज देन आईआरडीए ने क्या करा, आईआरडीए ने अपना इंटरनल एडवाइजरी निकाला, सारी इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज को बोला कि 16 अप्रैल के बाद whatever medical insurance you are actually selling it to various companies or establishment, you must look at it whether it is in compliance with the advisory which has been issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs. So basically, if somebody wants to now take credit in respect of that, जहाँ पर employee base ज़्यादा है, it's a sizable amount. What they can really do is that they can approach the insurance company, ask them to give them in writing that it is in accordance with the advisory which was issued under the specific act, और उसके हिसाब से they have been able to make the payment. One thing which should always be taken care of is इसके अंदर जो employee के जो family members है उसको include नहीं करना चाहिए. अगर उनका भी इंश्योरेंस कराना चाहते हैं, there should be separate policy for that. But once you include the family members also, then probably this would come out of that mandatory requirement and would become more of a corporate governance measure. और उस केस में हो सकता है क्रेडिट के ऊपर there can be a doubt. But till the time it is for the employee and it is in accordance with this order, there is no challenge as such that credit cannot be taken. Now this is very interesting issue, and now this issue is coming up slowly and steadily. दैट इज हम जब सेक्शन 17(5) पढ़ते हैं ब्लॉक क्रेडिट का, तो उसके अंदर एक जी करके है विच सेज दैट आपको गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज विच आर बेसिकली बोथ यूज फॉर पर्सनल कंजम्पशन उसका क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. नाउ क्लियरली ये लॉ के अंदर देयर इज नो डेफिनेशन ऑफ पर्सनल कंजम्पशन विच हैज गिवन दैट इज व्हाट इज पर्सनल कंजम्पशन एज सच. So from where we should be able to identify that, and the list of items which you see, that is uniform to employees को दिया गया, PPE kit in fact अभी कोई दिया गया, laptop दिया गया, packaged drinking water दिया गया, can we really say this is personal consumption? And if this is personal consumption, does it become a non-business activity? और इन सब का क्रेडिट नहीं मिलना चाहिए. तो अगर कंपनी अपनी एम्प्लॉइज को लैपटॉप दे रही है जो वो घर लेके जा सकते हैं, उनको यूनिफॉर्म दे रही है और उसका कोई चार्ज नहीं कर रही है, डज इट बिकम्स गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज यूज फॉर पर्सनल कंजम्पशन बाय द एम्प्लॉयर और उसका क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. द इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट टू आंसर इन दिस केस इज हमको पर्सनल कंजम्पशन किसके पर्सपेक्टिव से देखने की जरूरत है, क्वा दैट प्रोडक्ट और सर्विस और क्वा द पर्सन हु इज एक्चुअली टेकिंग द क्रेडिट. तो अगर आप गुड्स और सर्विस के पर्सपेक्टिव से देखेंगे तो नो डाउट यूनिफॉर्म का पर्सनल कंजम्पशन हुआ है एम्प्लॉय द्वारा, बट वो एम्प्लॉय जो इनवॉइस आया था यूनिफॉर्म का उसके ऊपर जो टैक्स है वो कंपनी ने पे करा है. तो क्या पर्सनल कंजम्पशन कंपनी के पर्सपेक्टिव से नहीं देखना चाहिए? एंड आंसर टू दैट बेसिकली कम्स फ्रॉम अ जजमेंट व्हिच वाज गिवन बाय द गुजरात हाई कोर्ट इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ इनकम टैक्स. So it's not a judgment of excise or service tax, but it's a judgment in respect of income tax, Sayaji Iron and Engineering, where they clearly said कि अगर कोई डायरेक्टर को गाड़ी दी गई है कंपनी द्वारा, बिकॉज इनकम टैक्स के अंदर भी पर्सनल एक्सपेंडिचर का डिसअलाउंस है व्हेन वी कंप्यूट द टोटल इनकम. सो इन दैट केस इट वाज क्लियरली हेल्ड कि अगर कोई गाड़ी दी गई है डायरेक्टर को, तो जो गाड़ी डायरेक्टर को दी गई है इन दैट केस दो इट हैज बीन यूज्ड पर्सनली बाय द डायरेक्टर, बट जिसने इसका एक्सपेंडिचर क्लेम करा और जिसने इसकी कॉस्ट बेयर करी दैट इज कंपनी, एंड कंपनी इज इनकेपेबल ऑफ एक्चुअली डूइंग एनी पर्सनल कंजम्पशन. Hence, in that case, their expenditure should not be disallowed. I think the same analogy would fall here, and hence, in respect of at least companies, we can be very clear and categorical to say that there would be no reversal of ITC on the ground that there is a personal consumption of input tax credit which has happened. Again, probably it will take some time and some precedents to develop to give this understanding to the other side, that is the revenue side, कि अगर ऐसा है तो personal consumption को हमको किसके perspective में पढ़ना चाहिए. My limited understanding or my limited point in this regard would be that personal consumption अगर हमें देखने की जरूरत है तो personal consumption probably in case of sole proprietorship firm where the owner is actually doing some expenditure on himself, like for example his own telephone expenditure. Probably in that case we have to look at whether there is some personal consumption in that regard, और अगर है तो फिर हमें क्या रिवर्सल करने की जरूरत है रूल 42 के अंदर. Otherwise I really don't see why this reversal should be done, but the issue in this regard is slowly and steadily coming up. Now we come to immovable property. That's a very interesting issue. I would not go into detail of it because हम सबको पता है कि दो सबसेक्शन है, सेक्शन 17 सबसेक्शन 5 का C और D, जहां पर बेसिकली immovable property का कंस्ट्रक्शन के ऊपर रिस्ट्रिक्शन है. But we know rather than going to C point, I'll go to D point, and D point is interesting because there is a judgment by an High Court of Odisha. That is, all of us know Safari Retreat. That Safari Retreat judgment, what basically it says is कि अगर अभी आज की तारीख में जो बिल्डर या वर्क्स कॉन्ट्रैक्टर है वही इमूवल प्रॉपर्टी के कंस्ट्रक्शन का क्रेडिट ले सकता है. Now, what's in respect of Safari Retreat, what Honorable High Court clearly said is कि जहां पर वो लोग कोई इमूवल प्रॉपर्टी का कंस्ट्रक्शन कर रहे हैं और उसको बेचने नहीं वाले हैं, but we are basically going to use it for the purpose of maybe renting it to somebody else for construction of a mall which would be given to somebody for use, then in that case we should read it as if it is not being constructed on own account और सेक्शन 17 सबसेक्शन 5D के अंदर उस ओन अकाउंट को हमको थोड़ा सा वी हैव टू रीड डाउन. नाउ आई एम नॉट गोइंग इनटू मेरिट ऑफ दिस जजमेंट, बट व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज आज की डेट में ये जजमेंट है, और बिकॉज आज की डेट में ये जजमेंट है और कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग जजमेंट नहीं है, then in that case it has some precedence value across India. In fact, it gives a lot of hope to all those people who are into construction business or maybe who are into renting business precisely, जिन्होंने कंस्ट्रक्शन की बहुत सारी कॉस्ट इनकर कर रखी है, बट वो ये सबसेक्शंस के कारण दे कैन नॉट टेक क्रेडिट. नाउ फॉर देम बेसिकली द बेस्ट एडवाइस वुड बी और बेस्ट प्रैक्टिस फॉर देम शुड बी दैट दे शुड एक्चुअली टेक क्रेडिट एंड रिवर्स दैट इन देयर जीएसटी और 3B. उनको क्रेडिट लेना चाहिए, रिवर्स कर देना चाहिए अंडर प्रोटेस्ट, write a letter to the department and keep that credit as an asset in the books of accounts by clearly saying that why have they done this step and why have they claimed it, so that tomorrow if Supreme Court gives a favorable judgment, they would be able to take the credit again, and they need not actually fall in that trap of section 16 subsection 4 जहां पर ये बोला जाए कि आप entitled तो हैं आप क्रेडिट लेने के लिए, बट बिकॉज आपने टाइम लिमिट फॉलो नहीं करा और आपने क्रेडिट नहीं लिया था पहले, इसलिए आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. There is one more way which says हम रिवर्स ही क्यों करें, हम क्रेडिट ले लेते हैं पर इस्तेमाल नहीं करेंगे, and let's wait what Supreme Court is saying. In fact, that's also a decent practice. It cannot be said it's a wrong practice for a very simple reason as to say, because कल को मान लीजिए ये जजमेंट अगेंस्ट में आता है और सुप्रीम कोर्ट बोलता है कि नहीं आपको ये क्रेडिट नहीं मिलना चाहिए, और अगर आपने इस क्रेडिट को इस्तेमाल नहीं करा है, डिपार्टमेंट कैन नॉट रिकवर इंटरेस्ट फ्रॉम अस फॉर अ वेरी सिंपल रीजन दैट जब हम सेक्शन 50 पढ़ते हैं जो इंटरेस्ट का सेक्शन है, हम उसकी जब सबसेक्शंस पढ़ते हैं हमें ऐसा कोई सबसेक्शन नहीं मिलता जो ये कहता है रॉन्ग अवेलमेंट ऑफ क्रेडिट के ऊपर यू हैव टू पे द इंटरेस्ट. समबडी वुड से सेक्शन 50 सबसेक्शन 3 में ये लिखा हुआ है, द आंसर टू दैट वुड बी सेक्शन 50 सबसेक्शन 3 में रॉन्ग अवेलमेंट पर रिवर्सल की बात तो है, पर वो अधूरी बात है अगर आप इतना ही पढ़ रहे हैं. सेक्शन 50 सबसेक्शन 3 ये कहता है कि देयर इज अ रॉन्ग अवेलमेंट ड्यू टू द रीजन व्हिच इज गिवन अंडर सेक्शन 4210 और 4310. And when you read 4210 and 4310, we realize these are those sections which are in respect of mismatch, where supplier को अपनी रिटर्न के अंदर कोई इनवॉइस दिखाना था, टैक्स पे करना था, रिसिपिएंट ने वो क्रेडिट ले लिया और सप्लायर ने उसको अपनी रिटर्न में नहीं दिखाया, और रिसिपिएंट ने उस क्रेडिट को रिवर्स नहीं करा स्पेसिफिक पीरियड में, दैट्स व्हाई ही हैज टू रिवर्स इट. If you would clearly read it, it talks about mechanism of GST or 1, 2, 3 matching. गवर्नमेंट ने आज की डेट में 2 और 3 की मैचिंग को पोस्टपोन कर रखा है, खत्म नहीं करा है, एंड दैट इज व्हाई 50 सबसेक्शन 3 इज नॉट एप्लीकेबल. 50 सबसेक्शन 1 वुड नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल ऑन रॉन्ग अवेलमेंट बिकॉज 50 सबसेक्शन 1 तब लगता है जब हम सरकार को कम टैक्स पे कर रहे हैं. अवेलमेंट अगर कर लिया और इस्तेमाल नहीं करा तो सरकार को कम टैक्स पे करने का सवाल ही नहीं उठता. So in fact the practice can be that you take credit, you don't reverse it. Tomorrow if in case you have to still reverse it, there would not be any problem in that case, for very simple reason that there has been no loss to the exchequer which has been caused. That brings me to another point which is again a very interesting point in respect of plant and machinery, जिसका credit सबको allowed है but with exception. So when I say जिसका credit सबको allowed है with exception, that exception is very minute and all of us should read it very seriously. Why? Because so we know all those plant and machinery which are movable in nature, there is no problem, there is no restriction, all of us can take credit. We need not actually refer to this slide, we need not actually refer to section 17 subsection 5. However, those plant and machineries which takes the character of an immovable property, there the credit is allowed, but subject to, then in that case we have to read plant and machinery which is given in the explanation to section 17 subsection 5. जब हम एक्सप्लेनेशन पढ़ते हैं तो वहां पे जिस तरीके से प्लांट एंड मशीनरी की डेफिनेशन लिखी गई है, एंड इफ यू रीड इट यू रियलाइज दैट ये एक स्टेप आगे बढ़ के है जो क्रेडिट को थोड़ा नैरो डाउन करता है. सो इट सेज प्लांट एंड मशीनरी मींस ऑपरेटर्स, इक्विपमेंट एंड मशीनरी fixed to earth by foundation or structural support that are used for making outward supply of goods or services of both and includes foundation and all those things. तो आगे वाला पार्ट अगर हम अभी ना पढ़े और हम सिर्फ बोल्ड में लिखा हुआ पार्ट पढ़े तो रियलाइज करते हैं कि यहां पर ही बोल रहे हैं वो प्लांट एंड मशीनरी विच टेक्स द कैरेक्टर ऑफ एन इमोरल प्रॉपर्टी, उसका आप क्रेडिट तो ले सकते हैं, बट दोस प्लांट एंड मशीनरी शुड बी यूज्ड फॉर मेकिंग आउटवर्ड सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. Now what does this mean of use for making outward supply of goods and services? Are they talking about one-to-one nexus? It looks like yes, they're talking about one-to-one nexus, but then in this case we will have lot of precedents coming from central excise, क्योंकि central excise में जो credit था उस पे condition था it should be used in course of it should be used for manufacturing, और courts ने इस word जो used है उसको interpret करके बोला कि use के केस में direct nexus के अलावा there can be indirect nexus. So you take the example of a lift, which is a plant and machinery, but it is in the nature of immovable property. Now, if it is a goods lift, अगर वो माल ढोने वाली lift है, clearly it falls under the explanation where the lift has been used for making outward supply of goods and services. However, if it is a passenger lift, then there is a problem because then we have to clearly bring out that what is the indirect nexus that passenger lift brings in the outward supply of goods and services. I am not saying that credit would not be allowed, but it will be a very difficult proposition to put forward to the revenue and maybe to the judges at a later point of time कि passenger lift का credit एक manufacturing entity या service provider को क्यों मिलना चाहिए. Probably in case of a service provider, it will be a better case to argue that credit would be available. But in case of manufacturing concern who are actually supplying goods, and that lift, if it is not in the factory, but it is in the admin area or it is in the office, then probably in that case it would be difficult. There will be a difficulty. Water treatment plant, again, if it is used specifically in respect of goods or services, how it will be used in respect of services, that's a question. But if it is used in respect of goods, clearly credit would be available. But if it is a general water treatment plant which is used as a drinking water also, and it is used in respect of goods also, then clearly it becomes a case where part of the credit may be allowed, part may not be allowed. So in respect of plant and machinery, credit is allowed, but there has to be a nexus which needs to be proved. और ये normal credit की case में applicable नहीं है, यहाँ पर applicable, and that clearly brings out the difference. Now I'll come to some smaller issues, and then I'll go to last 2 or 3 issues, and then we'll take up questions. One is in respect of employer-employee relationships. Credit, is there a restriction? So pehla comes is very simple, that food which has been given to the employees, and let's say it is given by a factory, in which under the Factories Act it is compulsory to maintain a canteen. In that case, whether credit would be allowed? So all of us know कि सेक्शन 17 सबसेक्शन 5 में एक अमेंडमेंट आया था 1/2/2019 से, जहां पे उन्होंने बोला था कि फूड आइटम्स का आप क्रेडिट ले सकते हैं, या तो वो आउटवर्ड सप्लाई में काम आ रहे हैं एज कंपोजिट सप्लाई और मिक्स सप्लाई और एज एन इंडिपेंडेंट सप्लाई इटसेल्फ, और फूड दैट इनवर्ड सप्लाई ऑफ फूड आइटम इज बेसिकली part of the statutory function, it is compulsory by any law. So first point to understand, at least in respect of manufacturing entities, जो Factories Act में covered है, उसपे section 46 के हिसाब से all those factories which are covered by it and they are in a specified location, then they are required to basically have a canteen facility. तो वहां पर canteen facility होना compulsory है, तो उस कानून से mandate तो आ गया. अब वो कानून से mandate आने के बाद ये GST law में अपना एक restriction है. And again, that restriction is a little funny, but at the same time it is very challenging. वो ये है कि अगर आप क्रेडिट लेते हैं, that means let's say you have hired an outside caterer जो आपकी कैंटीन में आके खाना बनाता है, and that food is being given to the employees, and let's say जो employees को खाना खिलाया जा रहा है that is free of cost, and that is not part of CTC, cost to the company, that is उसके CTC structure का वो part नहीं है. Then tomorrow department can bring an argument by saying because employer-employee relationship is covered by the definition of related person, so schedule 1 entry 2 में जाके these to become a related person. Once they become a related person, आपको ये deemed supply मानना पड़ेगा entry 2 के हिसाब से. और जैसे आप इसको deemed supply मानते हैं, we have to go to the valuation mechanism, उसके हिसाब से value निकाल के have to pay tax. जब आप rate schedule में जाके इसका rate देखते हैं, so rate is 5% without ITC. बिकॉज अगर कोई होटल या कोई अच्छा रेस्टोरेंट नहीं दे रहा है, बट स्टैंड अलोन रेस्टोरेंट और फैक्ट्री में अगर खाना खिलाया जा रहा है, दैट इज 5% विदाउट आईटीसी. सो द प्रॉब्लम इज एम्प्लॉय से आप कुछ रिकवर कर नहीं रहे. आउटवर्ड साइड पे यू आर पेइंग टैक्स एट द रेट ऑफ 5%. इनवर्ड साइड के ऊपर जो क्रेडिट आपको लॉ में अलाउड था, बिकॉज यू आर कंपल्सरीली डूइंग दिस एज एक्शन गिवन अंडर सेक्शन 46 ऑफ द फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट, पर वो क्रेडिट आपका रिवर्स हो जाता है क्योंकि आप 5% का टैक्स पे कर रहे हैं इस कंडीशन के साथ में कि आप आईटीसी नहीं लेंगे. So effectively, inward के 5% की cost, outward के 5% की cost, together it becomes a 10% cost. And then in that case, you wonder, is it really a beneficial provision? Then in that case, planning has to come into picture. Somebody has to plan, sit down and see कि अगर employees को इतने रुपए का food allowance दे दिया जाए, CTC में add करके and then it is deducted, then in that case can we really say कि हमने कोई outward supply करी भी है employees को, because हमने तो CTC से discharge करा है किसी और तरीके से, and once I do that, I'll be able to take credit and I don't have to pay tax on the outward side. So this becomes a clear case जहां पे हम worst credit को idle credit बना सकते हैं through a planning, where on the inward side we can take credit by actually changing the CTC structure of the employee on the outward side. with this, this is one judgment in respect of this. What I have been saying, it's a judgment in respect of service tax, where what they have clearly said is that whenever a subsidized food is given to the employees, our case was a free food. Even if a subsidized food is given, it's basically part of the pay package of the workers. Subject to that, we actually do it in documentation, and once we do that, probably we'll be able to actually take the credit. We come to CSR expenditure, whether the credit is allowed. You would always find two views. One view is very simple as to say CSR में आपको पहले तो जो खर्चा करना है वो कंपनीज एक्ट में मैंडेटरी है, इसलिए आपको करना है, और CSR में आप खर्चा वही कर सकते हैं जो आपकी बिजनेस एक्टिविटी से जिसका कोई लेना देना नहीं हो. और क्लियरली जो क्रेडिट मिलता है वो तब मिलता है when it is used in course and furtherance of the business, and that's why there is a clear disconnect in both two, and that's why you are not able to take credit of CSR. However, there is another perspective to it. And that perspective is very simple कि जो सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 8 है वहां पे लिखा हुआ है इन यूज और इंटेंडेड टू बी यूज इन कोर्स ऑफ फर्दरेंस ऑफ बिजनेस. जब हम इन कोर्स को इंटरप्रेट करते हैं, so there is a Supreme Court judgment in case of this Shamungla Vilas cashew nut factory case, which says in course does not mean during that point of time, but in course also means connected. Okay, so whatever expenditure we are doing under CSR, though it is not on the business activity, but still that CSR expenditure has connection with the business, because the business is there, that's why the CSR expenditure is happening. Otherwise also, अगर आप इनकम टैक्स के अंदर भी देखें तो सेक्शन 37 सबसेक्शन 1 में इसका स्पेसिफिक डिसअलाउंस है. ना इनकम टैक्स में जो खर्चे मिलते हैं और यहाँ पे जो ITC है, दोनों का कॉन्सेप्ट सेम है. द डिडक्शन इज इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ बिजनेस एक्सपेंडिचर. 37(1) में डिसअलाउ करने का इनफैक्ट ये क्लियरली आइडेंटिफाई भी करता है that CSR expenditure a part of the business, but government did not want to give benefit under income tax. That's why वो disallowance को हम उसको disallow करके वापस add करते हैं. In GST there is no such provision of specific disallowance, and that's why a view can be taken that it has connection with the business. जब हम business की भी definition पढ़ते हैं तो business की definition के अंदर 2 subsection 17 में when you read clause B, it says all ancillary and incidental activities in relation to the main activities written in A. तो कोई आदमी ट्रेड कर रहा है, मैन्युफैक्चर कर रहा है, प्रोफेशन कर रहा है, उससे एंसिलरी, इंसिडेंटल और कनेक्टेड एक्टिविटी. So CSR is ancillary to the main business. In fact, if not ancillary, it is incidental to the main business. CSR करने से आपकी रेटिंग बेटर होती है, you get a good acceptance in the society, and you are able to actually encash it for building your own brand, जो ultimately helps your business also. And that's what exactly Mumbai Tribunal also said in case of SL Propack. So SL Propack judgment clearly said this, where the question was in respect of SENVAT credit under centralized regime, and they said that credit would be allowed because ultimately it has relationship with the business. So maybe in all these lines we can relook at it, और जो लोग donation करते हैं उसके बजाय they may actually look at considering doing activities, getting invoices which has GST, and take benefit of that GST, and then look at it how it really happens and benefits them. I'll come to 2-3 very interesting issues, and probably these would be those issues which may be new for somebody, but yes, it brings out कि law में drafting के अंदर कहाँ पर difference है ITC में, and how can we really take benefit of this. So all of us know that we have to reverse the ITC if in case we are basically making any outward exempted supplies. Okay. Now, if some of your clients who are exporters, so all the exporter of goods or services, basically they get some export incentive in form of an MEIS license or an SCIS license. Basically, these are those licenses in which you can use them for making any import of goods without payment of duty to that extent. या फिर आप इसको बाजार में जाके उन लोगों को बेच सकते हैं जो import करते हैं, and then basically you can earn some profit out of it. पुराने जजमेंट है जो ये कहते हैं कि अगर ये MEIS लाइसेंस और SCIS लाइसेंस बाजार में बेचे गए हैं, so these are all tradable duty credit scripts. They have actually they have all the ingredients of calling themselves as goods. और हम नोटिफिकेशन नंबर 2/2017 जब गुड्स का पढ़ते हैं, we realize that this is exempted goods also. Once we do that, you realize आपका एक क्लाइंट जिसका एक्सपोर्ट टर्नओवर है 100 करोड़ रुपए का और जिसकी MEIS लाइसेंस है 5 करोड़ रुपए की, 5 करोड़ पे कोई टैक्स नहीं है, 100 करोड़ की जीरो रेटेड सप्लाई. Is he required to reverse the credit? The answer is yes, he is required to reverse the credit, common credit. Now the question which comes is, what is common credit in this case? So now interestingly, department has come out with a view by saying कि जो भी माल खरीदा जा रहा है एक्सपोर्ट करने के लिए, जो भी सर्विसेज ली जा रही है एक्सपोर्ट करने के लिए, उसका नेक्सस है इस MEIS लाइसेंस के साथ में भी, क्योंकि अगर आप एक्सपोर्ट करते हो तो आपको MEIS लाइसेंस मिलता है और MEIS लाइसेंस को बेच के आप एग्जेम्प्टेड सप्लाई कर रहे हो, एंड दैट इज व्हाई योर टोटल क्रेडिट बिकम्स द कॉमन क्रेडिट। तो अगर 100 करोड़ का एक्सपोर्ट करने के लिए मान लीजिए मेरे पास में 25 करोड़ की या 20 करोड़ की ITC थी, तो उस 20 करोड़ की ITC को बेसिकली आई हैव टू रिवर्स इन द रेशियो ऑफ 5/105। Whereas MEIS लाइसेंस को अगर जो मैंने बाजार में बेचा उसको खर्चा करने के लिए मैक्सिमम अगर मुझे खर्चा भी करना पड़ा होगा, that expense would not have been more than 2 lakh or 5 lakh rupees, तो क्रेडिट उसके अंदर 50-60 हजार ही होगा। Now in this case, first of all, the understanding has to be that common when this MEIS license comes into picture, तो MEIS लाइसेंस एक्चुअली पिक्चर में तब आता है, आपको एंटाइटलमेंट तो मिल गया, पर एंटाइटलमेंट जो है ये आउटवर्ड सप्लाई जब होती तभी एक्चुअली इट विल बी ट्रीटेड एज गुड्स का सप्लाई। तो नो डाउट एक्सपोर्ट करने से लाइसेंस का राइट तो आ जाता है, पर जब तक लाइसेंस बेचा नहीं जा रहा तब तक कोई आउटवर्ड सप्लाई नहीं है। दैट मीन जितने भी गुड्स खरीदे गए हैं एक्सपोर्ट करने के लिए उससे लाइसेंस का एंटाइटलमेंट आ गया, बट जब तक लाइसेंस बेचा नहीं गया तब तक उन गुड्स का और लाइसेंस के बेचने का कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है। एंड दैट इज व्हाई द अंडरस्टैंडिंग व्हिच रेवेन्यू हैज कम आउट विद, प्रोबेबली आई थिंक दैट्स नॉट करेक्ट एंड वी हैव टू कंटेस्ट दैट। However, let's say somebody says I have to reverse it, तो रिवर्सल कैसे होगा? तो रिवर्सल रूल 42 के हिसाब से होगा जो CGST रूल्स के अंदर है, जो कहता है कि आप मंथली रिवर्सल करिए और साल के अंत में जाके वापस एक पूरे साल का रिवर्सल करिए। नाउ व्हेन वी रीड रूल 42 पढ़ के ऐसा लगता है कि साल के अंत में जाके वो जब वो रिवर्सल की बात करते हैं, तो मान लीजिए मैंने MEIS लाइसेंस बेचा जनवरी 2020 में, तो एक बार तो मैं जनवरी की क्रेडिट का रिवर्सल करूंगा, जनवरी के टर्नओवर पे लाइसेंस के और एक्सपोर्ट के इनटू जनवरी की क्रेडिट, और साल के अंत में जाके मैं पूरे साल की कॉमन क्रेडिट निकालूंगा और साल में MEIS लाइसेंस का टर्नओवर डिवाइड बाय टोटल टर्नओवर करूंगा। दैट्स व्हाट वन वुड फील व्हेन दे रीड रूल 42। इंटरेस्टिंगली इट इज नॉट लाइक दिस। रूल 42 इस तरीके से नहीं लिखा गया है। रूल 42 लिखा गया है जहां पे वो बोलते हैं कि पहले आप हर महीने का रिवर्सल कर लीजिए, उसके बाद रूल 42 सब रूल 2 ये बोलता है पूरे हर महीने का रिवर्सल करने के बाद साल के अंत में जाके एक बार वापस रिकैलकुलेट करिए रिवर्सल को, पर रिवर्सल का जो रिकैलकुलेशन होगा वो होगा उसी मैनर में जैसे आपने पहले किया था। और मैनर कैसा है? तो जब आप मैनर पढ़ने जाते हैं तो मैनर पढ़ने पे क्लियर है कि वो बोलते हैं कि आपको टैक्स पीरियड का रिवर्सल करना है, और टैक्स पीरियड कानून में डिफाइंड है। टैक्स पीरियड मीन द पीरियड फॉर विच यू आर फाइलिंग द रिटर्न, इट इज डज नॉट मीन द होल फाइनेंशियल ईयर। सो दैट मीन्स अगर कोई साल के अंत में जाके रूल 42 में भी रिवर्सल कर रहा है तो उसको रिवर्सल पूरे साल के टर्नओवर और पूरी साल की क्रेडिट का नहीं करना, उसको करना वापस मंथ वाइज ही है, और मंथ वाइज का टोटल एक साथ 12 करके जोड़ना है, एंड देन ही हैज टू सी व्हाट आंसर कम्स एंड ही हैज टू कंपेयर विद व्हाट रिवर्सल ही हैज डन, और जो भी डिफरेंशियल एडजस्टमेंट है वो एडजस्टमेंट करने की जरूरत है। If we actually look at this and do it in this manner, I am confident that almost in 100% of the cases we would realize that reversal is much lesser when we do at the year end reversal, because जब आप मंथली रिवर्सल कर रहे हैं तो आपका एक्सपोजर भी मंथली ITC के ऊपर है, और आपका जो टोटल क्रेडिट है, जो आपका टोटल जो टर्नओवर का प्रोपोर्शन है वो भी उस मंथ का है। और जब आप इसको कंपेयर करते हैं ओल्ड पुराना सेनवेट क्रेडिट रूल्स में रूल 6 से, तो कोई कहेगा रूल 6 में भी ऐसा ही प्रोविजन था। द आंसर इज यस, देयर वाज अ प्रोविजन इन रूल 6 लाइक दिस, बट रूल 6 के अंदर मैनर चेंज हो जाता था जब हम पूरे साल का रिवर्सल करते थे। सो व्हेन यू रीड रूल 6 इट ऑलवेज सेड दैट व्हेन यू डू इट फॉर द होल फाइनेंशियल ईयर यू हैव टू डू इट इन फॉलोइंग मैनर, और वो नया मैनर बताते थे जहां पे वो साल भर का टर्नओवर लेते थे। जब आप रूल 42 पढ़ते हैं वो कहता है इन द मैनर स्पेसिफाइड इन द सब रूल, तो जो रूल 42 सब रूल 1 में जो मैनर लिखा था उसके हिसाब से GST में रिवर्सल है। पुरानी रिजीम में मैनर नया था साल के हिसाब से, मे बी somebody who is smart enough to understand this, they would relook at it and then they would consider how the reversal needs to be done, and इसके हिसाब से they can substantially reduce their reversal. I would take few questions, so before that I'll skip some of the issues which are little technical, but I'll come to one very interesting issue and one issue which is very pertinent, because I think ये एक वो चीज है जो it affects everybody. 2 or 3 small issues and then I would close in next 2 to 3 minutes. One is payment to vendors within 6 months. अगले 6 महीने में पेमेंट को वेंडर करने, पेमेंट को to the suppliers, which is an important condition in section 16. That condition clearly says कि अगर हम 6 महीने में सप्लायर को पेमेंट नहीं करते हैं then we are required to reverse our proportional input tax credit, और हमको पेमेंट सिर्फ इनवॉइस के टैक्सेबल वैल्यू का नहीं करना है, टैक्सेबल वैल्यू प्लस टैक्स दोनों का रिवर्सल करने की जरूरत है। Now the point is when you actually go to the law and when you read that provision is okay, the point is इसका रिवर्सल कैसे होगा? तो रिवर्सल तो रूल के हिसाब से होगा मैकेनिज्म में, so you have to find where is that rule, and when you try to find out the rule you realize there is a rule 37 जो ये रिवर्सल के बारे में बोलता है कि आपको रिवर्सल किस तरीके से करने की जरूरत है अगर आपने 6 महीने में पेमेंट नहीं किया है तो। ओके, नाउ व्हेन यू गो टू रूल 37 एंड व्हेन यू रीड द लैंग्वेज, रूल 37 क्लियरली सेज कि जब भी आप रिवर्सल करने जा रहे हैं और जब भी आपका कोई फिगर आइडेंटिफाई होता है, दैट रिवर्सल हैज टू हैपन इन जीएसटीआर 2, and they have not substituted this word GSTR 2 with GSTR 3B. तो जहां जहां उनको रूल में लगता था कि थ्रू 2 की जगह हमको 3B लाने की जरूरत है, they have done that. Rule 37 is one such rule, still the word uses GSTR 2. So look at this example कि आप रिवर्सल करना चाहते हैं बट रूल आपको बोल रहा है रिवर्सल तो 2 में ही होगा, तो हम क्यों जबरदस्ती जाके रिवर्सल को GSTR 3B में करें? बिकॉज GSTR 3B में क्या क्या करना है वो स्पेसिफाइड है. जस्ट बिकॉज जीएसटीआर 3B में रिवर्सल के बारे में लिखा है पर रूल 37 हमें 3B में रिवर्सल के लिए नहीं बोलता है. द पॉइंट इज व्हेनेवर 2 विल कम एंड 2 विल कम, दैट्स व्हाट गवर्नमेंट इज सेइंग, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट ने आज तक 2 की सबकी डेट्स को पोस्टपोन किया है. 2 खत्म नहीं हुआ है. There is no such notification which says that they are abandoning this GSTR 2. They are saying they are postponing GSTR 2. So till the time 2 is being postponed, we are saying I want to do reversal. I will do reversal whenever 2 will come. Don't ask me to do the reversal today. So this understanding of rule helps chartered accountants also while doing the audit or somebody else doing the audit, and in fact it helps the companies also where the amount of reversals are huge. They have various reasons for not making the payment. So rather than fighting at a high level by saying ये provision गलत है, ये arbitrary है, होना चाहिए नहीं होना चाहिए, right now at least the easier way out is the mechanism is not proper. अगर mechanism होता तो हम reversal कर देते. I'll take 16.4 as the last issue and then I'll come to an end because there are a lot of other things, but I think taking questions would be better. 16.4 का क्या issue है? So 16.4 का provision clearly ये चीज कहता है कि भाई if you want to take the credit, your entitlement of credit is time specific. You have to follow the time limit, and if you don't follow the time limit, you're not entitled to take the credit. Now 17, 18, 18, 19 में लोगों ने अपनी GSTR 3B और GSTR 3B दोनों सालों की उनको ड्यू डेट्स की बाद में भरा. 16.4 के अंदर जो आउटर टाइम लिमिट है दैट इज 6 months फ्रॉम द एंड ऑफ द फाइनेंशियल ईयर, और उस महीने की जो रिटर्न की ड्यू डेट है 17-18 में इस टाइम लिमिट को बढ़ा के 31 मार्च 2019 कर दिया गया था. Now all those people who have not been able to file their GSTR 3B of 17, 18, 18, 19 up till September of the next year or maybe March 19, whatever is applicable, they have received show cause notices from the department. अब इंटरेस्टिंगली शो कॉज नोटिस जो इशू हुआ है वहां पर जो शब्दों का इस्तेमाल है वो शब्द ये है दैट लास्ट डेट ऑफ अवेलिंग आईटीसी. तो मैं इसके ऊपर थोड़ा थ्रस्ट डालना चाहता हूं कि जो वर्ड व्हिच हैज बीन यूज्ड इज अवेलिंग आईटीसी, वेयर एज अगर आप 16 सबसेक्शन 4 पढ़ते हैं तो 16 सबसेक्शन 4 में कहीं भी वर्ड अवेलमेंट की बात नहीं है. 16 सबसेक्शन वर्ड 4 में जो वर्ड की बात है दैट इज टेकिंग इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट. इट सेज यू शैल नॉट बी एंटाइटल्ड टू टेक इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट. Is there a difference between availment and taking? The answer is yes. There is a clear difference in availment and taking because 16(2) की जो 4 conditions हैं, आपको invoice receive करना, goods, payment of tax and filing of return. उसमें filing of return is basically one such condition which is a condition precedent, but it cannot be a condition before taking the credit. Because think about this, अगर filing return becomes the condition which needs to be followed before actually taking the credit, तो it becomes a circular loop. बिकॉज क्रेडिट लेने से पहले आपको एक्चुअली वो कंडीशन को सेटिस्फाई करना है कि आपने रिटर्न फाइल कर दिया, और अगर डिपार्टमेंट का अंडरस्टैंडिंग ये है दैट टेकिंग क्रेडिट इज इक्वल टू फाइलिंग इन द रिटर्न, देन प्रैक्टिकली नो assessee is able to actually fulfill the 4 conditions which are given in 16(2). But we are able to fulfill the condition if we take credit on our GST records and at some point of time we file our GST returns, and in those GST returns we depict our credit. And whatever actually I am saying actually comes from the law also, because law में जहां they have to use the word taking the credit, they have used the word take. जहां पे they wanted to use avail the credit, they have used the word avail. In fact, we can go back to GSTR 9. Look at GSTR 9 table 6A, जो ITC के बारे में टेबल है, ITC reconciliation की, और वहां पे लिखेगा ITC avail through GSTR 3B. They have not used the word ITC taken through GSTR 3B. 16(4) is a word which stresses on the word taken. It does not use the word availment. पुराने लॉ में अगर आप जजमेंट देखेंगे तो बहुत सारे जजमेंट है वो कहते हैं अगर आपके सेनमेट रिकॉर्ड में क्रेडिट है then you don't have a problem and you can always actually you have taken care of the time limit of 1 year or 6 months. So my answer is that if in case your credit was there in your GST records, it was there in your books of accounts, and books of accounts were proper, and it was done before the end of the September, then in that case there is no problem as such, even if you file the return late. And in fact last point in this is, अगर आप सेक्शन 18(1)(a) और 18(1)(d) पढ़ेंगे, ये सारे वो सेक्शन है जब किसी ने पहली बार क्रेडिट जब वो ले रहा है, वो अगर अनरजिस्टर्ड था, कॉम्पोजिशन में था, एग्जेम्प्टेड में था, तो वहां पे वर्ड यूज हुआ है आईटीसी टेकन। और 18 सबसेक्शन 4 जो रिवर्सल का सेक्शन है, वो कहता है जिसने आईटीसी अवेल कर लिया उसको रिवर्स करना है। तो इनफैक्ट सेक्शन 18 के अंदर ही, एक ही सेक्शन के अंदर, पहली बार लेने वाले के अंदर द वर्ड यूज इज टेकन, रिवर्सल वाले के लिए वर्ड यूज इज अवेल्ड. So that means action of taken is at a different point, action of availment is at a different point. If the credit was there in your books of accounts, there is clearly no problem. All the notices which have been issued, they are on a wrong understanding, and probably we have to contest them together. So I think with this, probably I have to give a stop here to my monologue, and if in case there are any questions, I'll be happy to take those questions. But before I end, whatever I've spoken for last 1.5 hours, one thing which I always say is very important when at least I speak is, if you think I was making any sense in last 1.5 hours, and if I show you this screen and I ask you that, sir, what is this? Can you interpret what is this? तो आप में से जो लोगों को लगेगा that if I was making some sense, you would apply your mind and you might say either this is B or this is 13. दोनों में से एक चीज है. जितने लोगों को लगता है ये B है, and if I show you like this, it becomes 12, 13, 14, and probably your answer will change. Now you will say no, it is 12, 13, 14. Definitely जो लिखना चाहता था वो 12B 14 नहीं लिखना चाहता था. ऐसा your logical mind would say. All those who are saying this is 13, if I show you like this, your answer would change and you would say no, it looks like ABC, and the person actually wanted to write ABC. He has a bad handwriting and that's why he did not know how to write B, or he did not know how to write 13. My point is, we are interpreting this structure, this standing line and two curves. And answer to this interpretation changes depending upon इसके पहले और बाद में क्या लिखा है. And exactly that's how any tax law is. Whatever you're interpreting would actually depend upon आपका context क्या है, आपके आगे और पीछे what are you looking at. So if you know what your context is, and in that context you put your arguments, you read the law, probably what you think is correct, subject to you're able to actually make somebody understand your context. So if somebody understands your context, they'll be able to actually identify with your interpretation. Else it's a long battle which everybody has to really fight. So thank you so much again, CA Sansaar family, for giving me this opportunity to speak. And now I'm happy to take the questions.
Yes, you have rightly said. हमारे यहाँ पे कहते हैं कि संगत का असर है, तो आपके आसपास कौन है, that shows your personality, कि आगे कौन है पीछे कौन है. So that's the thing you said. Yes, definitely. So now I request Neha to please take the queries.
Sure, sir. The first query is by Praveen Sahu. Is a manufacturer required to reverse the ITC on expired food products which is disposed of by him?
Yeah, so as I've explained in the starting, if it is manufactured finished goods, I really don't see any provision जहाँ पे reversal की जरूरत है. If these are bought out items, yes, there would be a requirement to reversal. But if these are manufactured, 17(5)(h में भी condition में नहीं आते हैं, और Schedule 1 Entry 1 में भी cover नहीं होते.
Right. The next query is by Prakash Chand Bansali. Client is an exporter having export turnover of 100 crore and wind power plant of which sale is 10 crore, which being
Okay.
wind energy sales is exempt in GST. Whether reversal of ITC is necessary in that case.
Yeah, so I explained this also in by example.
Next query. Same query में उनका next part भी है, तो you can do that also.
He has also mentioned that in the above case, ITC on goods and services are exclusively used for export business. Will then also reversal be necessary?
So clearly, madam, in my view, it will not be required at all, subject to जो वो कह रहे हैं वो उनके record से prove हो जाए. So when we go to section 35, it clearly says how you have to maintain the record. It records are very clear कि ये goods or services production में काम आए हैं. Then of goods which have been exported, I don't see a problem.
Right, sir. Pawan Kaushik has a query that if a person has filed his GST returns, both 3B and 1, Can other parties be eligible to take credit to whom supplies were made by such person during that financial year?
If a person files GST or return 3 and 1 for can I think he has missed four,
Some-
but I think what I understand is he's saying if somebody is filing returns for 17 18 now क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट ने एक रिलैक्सेशन दिया है लेट फीस में, तो अगर कोई 17 18 की रिटर्न अब फाइल कर रहा है तो क्या सामने वाला क्रेडिट ले सकता है? द आंसर इज यस, ही कैन डू दैट सब्जेक्ट टू कि सामने वाले ने क्रेडिट अपने रिटर्न्स में ऑलरेडी सॉरी रिकॉर्ड्स में वो क्रेडिट ऑलरेडी पहले के सालों में दिखा दी है. अगर नहीं दिखाई और वो आप लेना चाहता है, देन आई सी देयर इज अ चैलेंज इन 16.
Right, sir. Vishak, is a query that if a GST registered person can avail input on 2018 August wrongly, but he did not utilize it till now. If I reverse now the same credit, then will interest be applicable over it?
Absolutely no, sir. I explained this. 50 subsection 3 doesn't cater to all these situations, so there is no reversal. In fact, there is a judgment of Pratibha Processors of Supreme Court, again in Central Excise Regime, which says interest is only applicable when there is a revenue loss to the government. So just by availing, we never cause a revenue loss to the government, and there is no interest requirement.
So Abhilash wants to know that are there any chances to take the input tax credit if the time limit as per law has already expired, that is October 20th of the next financial year, but annual return has not been filed yet?
Again, if it is there in the books of accounts, you have already taken it, just put that in the return. If it is not there in the books of accounts, I see a challenge as per the law.
Right, sir. Sachin wants to know that if we're selling at deep discount or a scrap, whether the amounts to be written off.
No, so there is no requirement of actually return off. It's just that you have to check whether your valuation is as per section 15 or not. तो आप डीप डिस्काउंट पे दे रहे हैं और वो डीप डिस्काउंट से अगर मान लीजिए यू आर गेटिंग सम इनडायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ऑल्सो, तो एक कंसिडरेशन की डेफिनेशन है और कंसिडरेशन में डेफिनेशन में देखेंगे वो डीप डिस्काउंट देने से अगर आपने अपनी सप्लाईज को इंड्यूस करा है, then practically it becomes part of the consideration. So you have to more concerned on the outward side valuation rather than reversal. There is no requirement of reversal.
Right, sir. There's another query that what is the difference closing stock between income tax and no, it should be service tax, annexure F.
Annexure F. Okay, I probably he has to clarify the question. Maybe it is more on the income tax side. Understand.
Let's take the next question, sir.
Yeah.
Yashwant Sharma wants to know that in case of banking industry opting for 50% of ITC, whether RCM tax credit is also to be taken 50% or 100% in view of the rationale that RCM stands on different footing and logically it should be 100%.
Yeah. So, sir, actually, RCM stands on a different footing only to the context by saying that the person liable to pay tax has been shifted. Rest everything else is same. So once we say everything else is same, if I would not have paid tax under RCM, supplier should have charged, but maybe government thought probably supplier would not comply. That's what has been given to the recipient. Otherwise, beyond this, there is no change in rationale, and hence 50% would be applicable, just like it is applicable on other supplies.
Right. Prakash Chandra Bansali has a query that is it necessary to first claim ITC on car purchase, then to reverse it, or can we exclude ITC on car while filing GSTR 3B?
You can clearly exclude it because in fact in GSTR 3B also that 17.5 reporting is only informational. So it should be informational. However, if your client has a case where he has to do the reversal of credit also because of exempt supplies, then he has to follow Rule 42. Once he follows Rule 42 के अंदर specifically you have to mention what is that amount of block credit. So you should be able to identify it, but yeah, there is no requirement of actually claiming it first in return and then reversing it.
So you've taken this query.
Okay.
Okay. Rajesh Singhal has a query that can we take ITC on RCM on same month or should we avail in subsequent month?
Yeah, it is in the same month, and in fact, it is on the same logic जिसकी मैं भी थोड़ी देर पहले बात कर रहा था, that is 16 subsection 2 कि हम credit लेते कब हैं. तो RCM में, as all of us know, that the requirement is that it is available subject to payment of tax. So payment of tax is the post facto conditions which is actually done through return. but taking and everything happens in that particular return only. So that's my view. You can take in the same month, subject to when you file your return, you pay that tax.
Right, sir. Vishak has a query. Can I reverse 1819 wrongly availed credit through latest month 3B?
You can do that, Vishak, for a simple reason that 3B practically it has no restriction as such. In fact, when you read Circular 26 also, which was in respect of omission errors and all those things, it said that you can necessarily make those changes. However, it is better you don't do it in 3B because unnecessary your annual filing becomes unnecessary clumsy and then you have to give an explanation.
So Ajay Gupta has a query that in case of RCM liability,
We
either
just done.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next is by Sachin. If rented office is renovated by giving the single contract of construction of furniture, etc., then how to take credit in that case?
So there is no restriction, Sachin ji, for a simple reason. Again, 17.5 C or D के अंदर जो credit है वो ही कहते हैं that which is capitalized in the books of accounts. Now, what I understand is this renovation, if it is not capitalized in the books of accounts and it is part and parcel of P&L, there is no restriction. First of all, even if let's say somebody takes a view by saying no, we are going to capitalize this, then what will happen to the furniture and all those things? Then there is a problem because then you are treating it as a composite contract, and then you have to identify what is the composite supply, which would be works contract in that case, which is capitalized. So if you are not capitalizing in books, no problem. If you are going to capitalize this, depending upon an accounting treatment, it's better to have separate contracts.
Right, sir. Arun Kumar Ora is saying that I'm registered in Delhi. I get tax invoice with IGST and place of supply is Haryana. Will I get the credit?
Yeah, so as per law, Arunji, absolutely you can do that. As per GST, and you cannot do that. But all of us know very well we have to follow law, and GST has to also follow law. So whatever GST is saying actually does not come from law. You can very well take the credit.
Right, sir. Nand Kishorji has a query that if a registered person imports goods for sale in India, is the purchase eligible for ITC?
Absolutely, Nankishwarji, subject to you are also registered, and whatever you are going to sell, you will be liable to GST also.
Right, sir. Sachin has a query that can we carry forward the credit of car to be taken in future against the liability when we sell the car?
Primarily, again, if you are into business where you did not buy a car to actually sell it, but you actually bought the car to use it in your business. In my understanding, the way law is, you have to read it harmoniously, and harmoniously it means that credit is only available to those who are going to buying car for the purpose of selling it further. So if you are not into that business, you should not carry forward the credit. Plus, then there will be loss of depreciation also because it is any which is going to be very litigated. So we should do financial management in a sense to understand what can be clear and without any problem or without any I would say scrutiny from the capital.
Let's take the 2-3 more queries because time is going.
Yes, sir.
Then
Sharad Gupta wants to know, can we take credit for air conditioner used in office?
Again, if it is air conditioner is in office, see plant and machinery you can take credit, but as I said that plant and machinery it has to be used in course and furtherance for outward supply of goods and services. So you have to prove the nexus. If you prove the nexus, you can do that. In my understanding, nexus can be proved for every capital goods. So I would say yes, but yes, you should be able to give it through documents.
Right, sir. Rishabh Jain has a query that I could not take sales return credit in March 2019. Can I do it now?
So Rishabhji, actually don't take credit, but I think what you're talking about is credit notes for March 19. You are not able to punch the credit notes. Um, Two things that if you have prepared the credit note and you have done that in GSTR 3B, the answer would be yes. It was not necessary to actually put them in GSTR 1. But if you're not done in 3B and not done in 1, then unfortunately Section 34 restricts you to do so, sir.
Right, sir. Aditya Maheshwari has a query that how the ITC of individual expired will be transferred to his wife's account. Is there
Okay, so
something
there
like
is a circular in this regard which was issued that a wife has to take a new registration. She has to write what is the reason for registration, and that credit can be transferred in that case.
that? Right. Sanjeev G wants to know, is credit on gardening service eligible?
Yes, if it is for the office premises or factory premises, I don't see a problem. In fact, there are judgments in excise and service, SINVAT regime basically, which is credit would be available.
Okay, so Pawan Kaushik, repeating his earlier question, if a person files GSTR FY 1819 today, in this situation, can other parties be eligible to take credit to whom supplies were made by such person in 1819 FY?
So Pawanji, if invoice are dated 1819 and those parties have shown the credit in their books of accounts, but in fact not shown in the returns, they are very well eligible to do it. But if it was not part of GST records, I'm afraid they, according to me, they would not be able to take the credit.
Right. The next one, do we require to reverse ITC on inputs destroyed after being put to use?
Yes, you would be required to do that because you've taken the ITC on input. So 17.5H would come into picture in this case.
So thank you very much, Yash ji, for such a wonderful session. Really appreciate your efforts. You did a wonderful job
Thank
and
you, sir.
answered all the queries. And my request to all of you, tomorrow we have another session on private test overview and taxability by Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji, ex-ITAT member. So my request to everybody to please be there at 4:30, and thanks everyone for watching this. And regarding, we have received 2-3 requests for PPT. If we receive from ESG, then we'll
Yeah, yeah,
definitely put it to
no
the
problem.
comment box, because we don't force to the speakers. If they
Yeah.
send us, then definitely we'll put it into the comment box and also send through the mail. If you have not subscribed our mail ID, then you go to the CA Sansaar and also subscribe for the regular email ID. You will get the email updates through email. So once again, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you, SG.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.